Okay, guys, before anything else, let me point out something. My friend Vigorous Steve deserves everyone's here to subscribe to his channel. He's a close friend of mine. Steve and I have a podcast with Derek, and there's absolutely no reason for me to have more subscribers than him. So I want, please, everyone listening to this, stop for a moment, go down, you'll find a link to Vigorous Steve's channel. He's a wealth of information, subscribe to him. Anyway, welcome, Steve. We're waiting for Bostin.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much.
Steve was just telling me that is it a house or an apartment that has 3 floors?
We have a house with 3 floors. Yeah, we specifically bought it with 3 floors, so every floor is a theme. So we have the home gym downstairs, where my wife is training people, and then I train once in a while, because it's so unmotivating to train in your own home gym, right? And then second floor is a loft. It's actually 2 rooms, but we broke it up. So we have a kitchen, and I can give you like a slight gym tour. So it's like a kitchen. This used to be 2. Oh, that's trash. So that's used to be two rooms. So we broke it up and put a kitchen on the second floor, and then on the third floor is our bedroom, and we have now we have a studio, and I have all the scars and blisters to prove for it. So we just put up this backdrop. I'm just gonna have to finish the light, and then upstairs will be legendary.
But do they allow, like, I think in some countries they don't allow 3 floors. Like in Dubai, it's actually illegal.
In Dubai, it's illegal?
I was always annoyed about it. Yeah, like some houses have very tall ceilings, but you can't have a 3rd floor. It's illegal. Like there's no attic.
It depends on where you are. So when you're close to the castle, or not the castle, it's like the main temple here in Thailand, like where the royal family lives, none of the houses can be higher than the royal family. So they're limited to like 2 or 3 floors, right? And then they have low ceilings. But sometimes they have these shop houses with the first floor is like 3.5 meters, and then the second and third floor is 2.4 meters. So here we're at 2.9, almost 3 meters. These ceilings, these go very high.
These are great.
Yeah, these go very high.
I love high ceilings. There's nothing better than that.
And then I realized, okay, you get all this extra space, and then the BTU of the air conditioning has to be twice as high because I have to cool the entire room. So our electricity bill is like sky high.
That's true. Hey,
what's up, Bostin?
What up, guys?
Hey, you look different every week. I mean, something's going on. If his hair changes, his facial blow changes. One day he's ripped, one day he's...
Dude, I change a lot. No matter. It's all diet. It's all my diet, dude. Like my diet's fucking all over the place.
Okay, we have a lot of housekeeping to go through. The first thing I wanted to mention, listen, I never give book recommendations, but I just bought this book for my wife. This is the first chapter of 3 volumes of A History of the Rothschilds by Niall Ferguson. Niall Ferguson is probably the biggest celebrity historian in the world. This is the book, or this series of books that made his reputation. They're the best detailed historical account of the Rothschild family. If you're starting a family and want to learn how to make a family last 300 years, this series of books are very interesting. I bought this for my wife when I discovered somehow she's lived all her life without reading this. If you guys haven't, I highly recommend it also. That's the first thing I want to mention. Second thing is, I want to mention people really like this bad coach, good coach list, Bostin. So I want everybody to know that Blue is coming back on the show.
I wonder which list I'm going to be on.
I have had so many emails saying, hey, my coach is one of the bad guys you've mentioned. And he's like, I'm starting to see all the bullshit. And he's like, I thought this was, a lot of people think it's normal, dude, for their coaches to like take weeks to respond and shit. I'm like, that fucking ain't normal.
Yeah.
No, one day.
Exactly.
Well, one day, sometimes you miss a day if you're really busy, but I try to respond within one day.
I started to take Sundays off. So I'll do all of my emails up till about noon on Sunday, and then I'm done.
Yeah, same. I have half a day off on Sunday. Otherwise, you go nuts. And we are all family men, so we need a little bit of wife time, on Sunday. Otherwise, it's too much.
The curiosity is, when does Bostin ever sleep? Because when I wake up, I get a text from Bostin. When I'm asleep, I get a text from Bostin. Not in the middle of the day, usually. Are you sleeping in the afternoon?
I had a doctor's appointment today, so that's why I texted you early.
No, but often you're awake at 8 a.m. California time.
Yes, all the time. I don't go to bed till about 5 a.m.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. You guys are all the same, right? Like Derek also stays awake until 9 in the morning or something. He's like on that pickup artist time where you go to the clubs. Like I used to have a phase in my life where I would just do the opposite. You're sleeping all day, and then in the evening you're awake. But that was not for business in any way, shape, or form. That was just good to go out.
I think YouTubers tend to do that, but Bostin does it probably for no reason. I don't know what he's up to.
Like I tried to fix my sleep schedule. My body goes right back to this.
So the other thing I wanted to mention, so we're gonna get Blue back on, and next time Blue has an idea of having people call in with their stories about coaches.
Will you be able to do that?
We can't do it on the show, but we could have somebody call in and put him on like speaker and hear about it.
Okay.
It could be funny, but anyway, I want to mention that.
Send a text message. So let's see where I end up.
No, you'll end up on the good coach list, of course. We didn't mention him
fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
So, no, I always recommend Steve to people that are health conscious and interested in bodybuilding. I think you may be the most health conscious bodybuilding coach, but you don't coach bodybuilders as much anymore.
Well, I priced myself out of the market, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think I'm too
more
expensive.
health conscious than me? I'm just kidding.
He's also very health conscious, but
yeah. You're a health conscious also, right?
Now. Yeah, that is true. Actually,
even more so now.
Yeah.
So Bostin, do you think that like everybody has to go through this process, right? Where in the beginning you start using performance enhancing drugs, and you're like reckless. And you're like, yes, 1,000 grams a train, and this on top, and that, and you're the cocktail is the most complicated thing ever. Representative of an IFBB Pro, but we're not competing at the IFBB Pro level, right? It's super complicated. And then as our health declines, we slowly start to realize like, oh, maybe was not a good idea, you know. And then you slowly get more health conscious with your clients. So, but
when I first started coaching clients, like when people send me blood work, like I would know like some of the markers, but like not even close to what I know now. So like I kind of feel like an idiot now even letting people send me blood work back then, because I wasn't even really looking at creatinine and stuff like that. But yeah, see back and knock on wood, I've never had any clients had any health complications like that. But I've had clients that have had issues, but not from like just direct steroid use. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's definitely something to look at. And now my biggest thing, Leo, when somebody sends me blood work, the first thing is I'm like looking for the creatinine.
but it's beyond that for Bostin. I think Bostin honestly is like me, and I think part of your use of chemicals was not like I'm going to make myself a competitive bodybuilder. It was like I want to find out exactly what these do. I want to know the truth. I want to explore every avenue, and I want to see what's possible. And in the process of doing that, Bostin hurt his body so much, not the kidneys, the pure pec, different, scar tissue, different kinds of things. So it made you potentially make all the mistakes that would teach you to be potentially the best coach around. Exactly. Somebody who's tried everything and knows what every other coach does also, and has every other coach's program and reflects on.
Do you have my protocols also, the Bostin? Do you have my protocols and my ebooks?
I do not. No.
I'll send you them. Don't worry. I'll send you.
I'll send you my ebooks. I'd like to see what you would think about my insulin ebook. I think I'm the only one who ever attempted an insulin ebook, and it's selling very, very well, and I get good feedback. But I would wonder what you think. It's like 70 pages of disclaimers. It's 70 pages of disclaimers in the beginning, just to understand the bio. Yeah, because otherwise I didn't feel comfortable.
Yeah. How long did it take you to do this book?
This one took me like 6 months.
Yeah, that's that because insulin, you can't just be like, here, take this. You know what I mean?
No, and it's still not 100% complete. But otherwise, it would be a 200-page ebook. Now it's like 140.
Wow.
And yeah, so
that's a book.
No, it's huge. It's a real book. Yeah, it's already on Reddit. Of course.
They posted it on Reddit.
They posted it on Reddit, fuckers.
You guys remember the website Basskilleronline?
Yeah, great website. I refer to once in a while.
There's some good information on there.
No, it's still valid.
Did you guys watch the Logan Paul fight with Mayweather?
Yeah, I fucking purchased it, dude.
What did you think of it? So what did you think of the pre-fights? Did you like any of them?
I didn't see the pre-fights. Actually, I saw the fight before the fight, and that the guy was laying on the floor and shit. So I thought that was stupid, right?
That guy was quitting, huh?
Yeah, he quit. He just quit
3 times. Yeah.
But as far as the fight goes, dude, like I was pissed that I wasted 50, and the only reason I wasted 50 is because I had a friend over, and I had the stream, and I had a free stream, but the free stream was in Spanish. and I was getting annoyed.
No mas.
Yeah, what did you guys think about it?
No more.
You should have texted me, man. My client sent me like 15 links. Every time one would break, I would text him and he would send me another link. He loves MMA. I've never watched... this wasn't MMA. This was boxing. I had a lot of thoughts. Number one, boxing is the weirdest sport, man. You can hit the guy 500 times and they don't fall over because it's not a real fight and you're wearing these huge gloves. Yeah. Apparently, if you wear lighter gloves, it still goes the same. But I didn't realize... I forgot how boring boxing is compared to MMA.
So boring.
And then the second thing is, I thought that Logan, not one, but like, so it was really interesting. Nobody thought that this bigger guy would beat a very, very skilled arm wrestler. And he basically, Mayweather I don't know if you saw him talk afterwards, he kept making excuses for why he basically couldn't knock.
That I did see.
Yeah, so it turns out he was trying to knock him out, but couldn't. The guy has a jaw of steel and he's stronger and he just couldn't get him down. And Logan wouldn't give up.
I didn't prepare from what he said. But then again, it could be an excuse, you know?
How if it was a 12-round fight? You think it would have went still the 12 rounds?
I don't know, but Logan was not giving up and he clinches really well. I was telling my wife, I think this is the wrestling thing. He's clinching so well. And I was looking at how his hands were holding Floyd. I felt like Floyd couldn't get out of it sometimes. Like he looked like he was sleeping, but his arms were flexed. He was trying to hold him close to him. So I was really impressed, to be honest. These guys have heart, those brothers.
Yeah. You didn't think it was rigged, like they talked to each other, like on the phone?
No, I thought Floyd looked really upset about it afterwards. He did not want to lose. He mentioned all of his winning fights in a row. He's like, I won this, I won this, I won this, I won this. So don't judge me on this. Like,
I'm a Hall of Famer.
He definitely didn't lose. I mean, if you looked at how many times they hit each other and the percentages, Floyd was still way up.
His percentages were way up, but he landed like 15 more punches than the guy. But the other guy shot like 100 more punches than him.
But wasn't this considered to be an exhibition fight? Kind of like
you can't have a winner. They can't declare one.
Right.
Yeah. So there's that. And then today I was watching Nick's Strength and Power video, and I noticed two things I want to comment on. One is there are progress pictures from Nick Walker and Iain Valliere. One is I have a prediction for Nick. That's not an evil one, but I was looking at Nick. He keeps growing more and more, and the way he acts, how relaxed he is, and everything, and he's acting more and more like Dallas. The way, like how calm he was, and all that. I feel a lot of growth hormone coming out of this guy. So I looked at his abs, and I noticed the top level of the abs are starting to split. So I have a prediction that in the next 2 years, I think he's gonna get a hernia in his abs. So
that's one thing. It looks like. Yeah.
You saw that also?
Yeah, but it's been getting worse. He didn't have it as his first. He likes to post those pictures like the first couple of shows and then recently. But I think it's just part of the game because so many of these super big pro bodybuilders, they end up getting that.
From growth hormone?
From growth hormone or intestinal growth or strenuous workouts. I think it all contributes. You know, you have this pressure internally and the heavy weights and I mean, these guys train like maniacs, you know.
You never saw hernias in abs in the before growth hormone came about in the 80s, 70s.
No, that's true. That's true. So, but then again, I mean, the weights have almost doubled, right? Yeah. And the food intake has almost doubled also, right? The intestinal growth. I mean, none of these guys can pull a vacuum.
Yeah, it's maybe the growth and the insulin that I think really accentuates the.
I know the other extra stuff, you know, that nobody knows about.
The other thing, you guys know that I'm a big fan of Iain Valliere, but I have to comment on something. Why do all his pictures show his ass in them? And some of them don't even have clothes on that. Every time I'm like, what's going? My wife actually started commenting originally when we would see it. She's like, why is the guy's ass out? He loves to show his ass. So Iain, if you hear about this, we don't need to see the ass all the time. It's not necessary, bro. We know you're
mindset.
He's happy with the glutes, that's why.
Yeah, right. Well, you're Bostin, you get it many times also. You got client progress pictures and then there's like nothing. Or they were a sock. And I'm like, dude, I don't need to see this. You're not doing tanning.
This client actually became a friend of mine. He'll text me from now and then. I asked for his check-in photos and he just sent me bare-ass photos with his dick out and his ass out. And I didn't even say anything because I'm like, maybe he thinks it's normal to do that. And it became so routine that it was just I would tell Ariella, I'm like, dude, we're doing this shit, and it would become so routine. And he never changed, dude, his check-in photo, and I never said anything because I just didn't care. And then the more I got to know him, the more I realized like this is just him, you know.
I get him once in a while, you know, like completely bare naked, and then I'm like, dude, it's not necessary, you know. I'm married. It's not. I can see the striations through your posing trunks. You're in shape. Don't worry.
Chicks do that too?
Yeah.
Not really. I would never allow that. If a chick did that to me, I'd cut them. I would give them.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. The female client, male coach relationship is very dangerous, I think. Like if you're married, it's probably not a good.
You know that firsthand.
Yeah. That's true. So I've only been taking female clients that have a relationship. I don't want them single because I used to do that in Thailand and I get way too dependent on you.
Apparently,
That's
that
how it
doesn't
hel-
matter either because she wasn't single. The one Boston's
Yeah,
talking about.
yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, right.
Yeah. But
No,
okay.
you're right. I only take couples too, Steve. Like
Yeah.
unless someone like is like a referral of like a boyfriend or like I work with their
Mhm.
husband, or if I think it's right, if like a bikini chick contacted me, which I've had that before, I'll send them over to a guy that specializes in bikini. Like I have no interest and I have no experience with that. So why would I put myself in that situation?
Yeah, I have a lot of experience with it, with the bikini and the figure girls, because my wife competed in those classes or something in between. It's like wellness before there was wellness. And so I coached a lot of women in the past, and I'm pretty good at it, keeping them healthy and feminine in the process. But I have no interest in it anymore. I know ever since my wife stopped competing, I have no interest. And the last couple of preps I did, there's a little bit of not so good connection with the client, and maybe they're not following the program correctly or not explaining it properly. So I just stopped coaching women altogether now.
The woman, competitive women are the worst.
They have a lot of questions.
They're just they can't really how like when they get hungry they break, dude. Like most of them, like
Yeah.
they're bingers.
Do they usually lie about it after?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Hectic.
And then they get very insecure at the end, and then they want to resort to pharmacology when in reality they hired me to stay healthy, right? And then not get all this virilizing nonsense. And then in the end, they go completely haywire because they've been scrolling to their competitors on Instagram who all post these phenomenal pictures, right? And then they get bamboozled into thinking that everybody's 10 times better than them, and then the drugs go up without telling the coach. So after a couple of years of that, I'm kind of over it.
Actually, Boston, both of your wives used to compete. His wife used to be a top competitive Thai lady. That's how they met.
Oh.
Yeah. So I wanted to mention one thing real quick. I forgot last podcast. I wanted to recommend from the forum, there's a guy called Braun. His MK677 is in pill form and doesn't kill me and is probably one of the best I've ever tried. I wanted to mention that he's a good guy. And then I wanted to mention, Boston, the big news. What happened with the doctor today?
Okay. Amazing, dude. Like, he spent over an hour with me. That guy was so good. Like he talked to me, dude. He had the guy from the home dialysis call me after immediately, and the guy wants to start teaching me the system. The best news I heard all day is because I'm AB negative AB negative blood type. He said I'll get a transplant in 1 to 2 years max.
Oh wow, fantastic! From a cadaver transplant?
Yeah, like on the list. Yeah,
but it's still 2 years. It's such a long time. Why does it take so long?
Usually, if you're like an O, you have to wait like 7 years. If you're like if you're like a B, or just like an A, you have to wait like 5 years in Florida is the wait. But he said for me it would be like 1 to 2 years on max. But honestly, like he told me the home dialysis that he has at the place, it's 2 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you do it at your house, and man, I would die for that because I could do that while I work,
Is that the hemodialysis?
Yep, it's called the NX stage machine. Stage machine, yeah.
So that's being used. Yeah, that's being used to beat drug tests. So keep in mind that it will lower your testosterone levels.
Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, Steve mentioned this to me, Boston. So it's interesting. He was saying that they use that to beat drug tests sometimes. Fascinating. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, because it helps with kidney filtration, right?
I'll keep you updated because when I started, I'm hitting that trend.
So did he order any blood tests for you?
Dude, the guy was amazing. Ordered an echocardiogram, a stomach ultrasound. He ordered all these tests because he says once I get on the transplant list, they're going to ask for these tests. And if I already have them, it'll be a quicker process. He ordered me my fucking for my iron and my CBC, which my other doctor wouldn't order for me. And he ordered a complete urinalysis, everything. Dude, the guy was, I can't say. He spent over an hour with me, dude. And he was like so involved. He said
that's a doctor that cares. Yeah.
He's going to research the peptide that I took and see if he has any more.
Oh, wow.
He did recommend that drug that I got coming in from Amazon called Renadyl. I think you've heard of that, Leo. It's actually it's a probiotic. It's been known to bring lower uremia and help uremic toxins flush out, and it also brings the GFR up. So he was great, man. Like I told him, I said I've never had a good experience with a doctor, and the guy was great.
If you got a doctor that is doing research for you on his free time, figure out what he likes on his free time and then donate a little bit, because these guys, they go the extra mile and they're very far and few between the doctors that research on their own time, specifically for a case like you. Because I've had a couple doctors here in Thailand that researched on their own free. Like I would send them an entire drug protocol, right? Everything that I took now in the past, and they would do the research on everything. And these guys deserve a little bit of a bonus.
Most doctors are closed off with that shit. He wants to learn about the adipotide and the FTTP because he asked me, and he's like, he was researching it while I was there. He was researching it, and but yeah, what do you mean by go the extra mile? What can I do to like give him like an Amazon gift card or something like that? Is that
something like that? You figure out what he likes. If he likes a bottle of wine or some cigars, or sometimes a financial donation is in place, because you got to keep in mind, that's on his time after all he's doing all the. The other people that he's helping along the way. So
I'd love to do that. I didn't know that doctors accepted anything like that.
No, you don't tell them. You just give them.
Yeah, I was wondering if you conflict.
You do that after the fact, not before the fact. If you do it before the fact, you're kind of bribing them to get certain tests done, which sometimes works. So what kind of bottle of wine you like? And can you give me a script for, right? That's maybe in Asia it works. But if you do it after the fact, it's just to show gratitude. And that should be okay.
When you see a good doctor like that, it's so like refreshing, because I dealt with shitty doctors that just didn't give a fuck. Like every time I mention to doctors that I've taken steroids, they pretty much write me off,
Yeah, I know. This went well. A lot of us have been praying, Bostin, that meeting went well. So now hopefully it'll soften you up to in the future potentially other doctors, but we'll see about that. Baby steps.
By the way, I feel I sound really sick right now because I am. I think I have COVID. I can't taste anything. My whole family is sick. We've been sick for over a week, and it keeps getting worse. So that's why I sound all raspy.
Really?
Go. Are you going in for blood work anytime soon?
Oh, are you talking about getting a COVID test? I'm not going to do that.
No. You can test it by yourself, based on your blood work, because D-dimer will be severely elevated.
I don't even have any interest in knowing, but I just know that I'm sick.
Okay. So to
I
make
was
feel
hoping you weren't going to be like, you should get the vaccine, because
no. I'm still waiting on to see which one is the most efficacious after like a year. So I'm holding out myself. But I just wanted to confirm or reassure you that I've had like 10 clients get COVID over the last couple of months, and they all recovered.
I got it twice.
I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
I got COVID for sure twice. Like I know everybody says they got it. I definitely got it twice. And I'll tell you something. I think the vaccine is more difficult to tolerate. Scott Mendelsohn was laid out by the second dose of that.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Yeah,
he was laid out. I've never seen Scott laid out by anything.
I'm surprised him at all people would have got a vaccine.
We live in California, bro. We can't. So Biden says if you have a vaccine, you don't need to wear a mask. California is like, you still do. So we have no. Anyway, it's ridiculous. And I don't want to get too much in this subject. But listen, guys, we have this week a lot more pictures. So let me share my screen. We'll start with the. So what should we start with? We should start with rate-minded genetics. Before we do, I want to mention something to people. The reason we're doing this is the reason I thought of it originally was because when I was young, I didn't know what could happen if I took steroids. We didn't know that much back then. So I explored just like Bostin did a lot, maybe more than I needed to. You guys can potentially limit the level of exploration you need to have by learning ahead of time. So we just want to give people some advice to maybe prevent them from wasting their time or overusing steroids. Of course, if you love something, you should always pursue it. But, we just want to help people be realistic. Like when I was young, I didn't know if I could be a top strength athlete. I thought maybe I could if I used steroids. I can't, But
to be fair, I mean, like some guys, they don't look so good in the beginning, but then you see them like 20 years later or 10 years later, and they look phenomenal. I mean, when you look at my pictures drug-free, I look like nothing. I really look like just an average gym rat, and not a good one at that. And then, you slowly start cycling and doing some experiments. And then I finally ended up looking like a pretty decent bodybuilder. Not a great bodybuilder, but
which is a great point.
One.
Great point. So this is what we want you to tell us when you send in your info. We want you to tell us exactly what AS you've done, how long, what you've taken. We want to know your years lifting. We want to know your age. We want to know your goals. And we want to know your lifts, what you started at and what it progressed to in your top lifts. And then we could give you maybe some insight. But like Steve is saying, people respond to androgens a little bit differently. So if you've always been natural, we can't necessarily know how you respond. But if you tell us you've been on gear for a year, or 2 years or 3 years, then we can tell you, hey, so there's two ways to look at it. Now, this gentleman, the pictures aren't perfect, but I thought it was pretty interesting because he was doing 1.5 years of calisthenics, not proper lifting. And he did not use any steroids or PEDs before this. He recently started training like a bodybuilder. His weights are medium of the range. And he just started using hormones. But it's interesting because the pictures are before the hormones. And I thought, look at that back, huh?
It looks pretty good.
For calisthenics.
We can't blame anybody for doing calisthenics if all the gyms are closed. I have to do calisthenics at home also.
I mean, the facial expressions are a little off, but the shape of his physique is really good, I think, for somebody doing calisthenics. What do you think, Bostin? And his weight?
I could see how he could have good genetics if he. I mean, obviously doesn't have much going on now, but I could see the muscle insertions and stuff like that. But who the hell takes 125 mgs of test? That's what I want to know.
We'll talk about that later. We have a lot of cycle reviews.
People are getting a little bit more health conscious, and
but it's his first cycle. Why? That's even pointless. He should just stay natural.
We have one. We have a question literally about that topic. We'll discuss in a second.
Okay.
But, so this guy says he's 18 years old and 190. He's been going to the gym for 4.5 years and started using creatine recently. So he's completely natural. He eagerly waits our analysis. This guy impressed me a lot. He's only 18 years old and he's training natural. Very, very impressive. So this is somebody I would say you have some serious potential, maybe in strength, or maybe we don't know enough information, but this is abnormal, don't you think?
He's natural, yeah. Is he? Yeah. Are you sure this is natural? This is not natural plus ostarine or something like that?
No, he just said he recently started using creatine.
Okay.
So if that's true,
I'm impressed.
I'm impressed.
If that's true, I'm impressed also. What he needs to pay attention to is his estrogen levels going forward. So if he ever decides to go on cycle a couple of years later, because I do see a decent amount of aromatase activity, which is good for anabolism in the beginning. But if he ever goes on cycle, he might overshoot and end up with a pretty high estrogen level.
You say that because he has water?
Yeah, how his face, the fat on his lower chest, just the thickness of his skin.
He's young though, man. They're all estrogen.
Yeah,
right. It could also be the case, right? So that may balance out, 5 years later. But if he's already like this, I don't think he's going to wait 5 years. He might wait like 3 years, and then it's good when the creatine no longer provides gains. Maybe the Adrenal will.
Yeah. So this is Prince Darius, which is a princely Persian name, and he says, "Ranked by I'm 59. I'm 5'9", 160 pounds, and natural." He's 24. Okay, another natural guy, which I find really interesting because this guy.
What?
Yeah. So this
good.
Guy. Look at that.
But I've seen these guys before.
That's natural. That's amazing.
Yeah, I've seen these guys before. They contact me. So, do you think I'm ready for my first cycle? And you see the testosterone's like 1100. And I'm like, dude, why do you want to start using gear when your testosterone's so good?
Fucking shot right there.
Impressive as hell, right? So
he looks good.
What did you guys think he wasn't natural, honestly?
Yeah.
Yeah. If I saw those shoulders, I would think he was pinning his delts.
Yeah.
I mean,
especially at 5'9", but he's 160 at 5'9". That's very light, but he does look very lean.
His back looks natural.
Yeah, I mean,
you can tell by the traps and the lack of thickness. But he is white though. I think he's got a lot of potential for sure.
For bodybuilding, right? For physique.
For any physique sports, yeah. He would do good in classic for sure. Just needs to round out the back.
Physique now, if he wanted to diet down.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, he could win a local show if he just diets down a little bit further. But then, of course, his testosterone would crash. So that's something he has to keep into consideration. And it might take months to get back, after doing a natural show.
So this guy is 19 years old and currently 175. He's been training for exactly a year. The before pics were taken in June 2020 and after are May 2020. He was about 150 in 2020 and he's now 175. He's also natural. He uses omega-3s, protein, and that's really all. He asked a question. Let's talk about this beforehand. He says, I do drink beer I think he's English, by the way. I do drink beer 3 to 4 times a week, but only have max 4 beers. Just a side question, but to what extent will alcohol inhibit muscle protein synthesis? If I cut out beer completely, will I notice an improvement on gains? I actually should make a video on this. So I was always, whenever I was an alcoholic, which there was like a 3-4 year period where I was an alcoholic, every time I'd work out, I couldn't gain muscle. It was very weird. And later I find out that alcohol is actually a very potent inhibitor of mTOR, the biggest growth pathway in the body. And it does that via 2 mechanisms. Alcohol is extremely against what you want to do if you're a bodybuilder. For a variety of, not even the oxidative stress, not all that, it turns off mTOR worse than Nolvadex will, worse than anything else will for you. And it
inhibits protein synthesis also.
Yeah, proteins via mTOR. And it does this, when you're younger, it does it worse than you're older. So
this is drinking 4 times a week, that's a lot.
He doesn't look like it though, does he? Look at that.
Wow.
Oh, it looks great too.
Incredible.
I think he can gain another 5 pounds if he stops drinking.
Look at the difference. I mean, this is a year difference.
That's a good
A
transfer.
little surgery, I think, in his lower abs. You go back one picture?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Is there a little scar there or no?
Yeah, there is.
Okay.
Well, that's very interesting. Why is there no scar in the other one?
Maybe pancreas. Maybe it's older. Obviously, it healed a little bit better.
Maybe it was a new. That's interesting. You should comment down below, buddy, and tell us what that scar is about. It's curious. But I mean, for a natural guy that's in training a year,
it looks good. Yeah.
There's something.
Could eat a little bit more.
Very good.
Very good, right? So these are people that you can encourage. You might have a future in the sport, and it might be worthwhile if you ever choose. What are you saying, Bostin?
The next one, I want to see if that Daniel guy is who
he
I
is.
think.
He's there. I'll find him at the end. So this guy is saying he's 27 years old. He's been working out Lifetime Natural, training for 12 years. Now, I thought this was an interesting example because this guy has insane genetics. You can't see it here so much.
Wow, look at that back.
Yeah,
He's natural.
Yeah. This guy will go somewhere.
And look at this. Look at that tricep, for God's sake. I mean, look at that. Natural. He looks. That's like.
I'm getting a little bit jealous now because I was 27 and a little bit heavier at my heaviest, but I never looked like this before I started using hormones. I mean, this guy's got great muscle insertions.
Look at that.
And honestly, does he have social media present or not?
He didn't mention here, I don't think, but he's really.
This is a very marketable physique.
He wants to go to men's physique.
Yeah, I think you can do a show natural and then see what he's up against his competition because they're going to be significantly heavier, and then he needs to make a calculated decision. If he goes up, he needs to get those obliques under control. But everything else looks very, very good. If he rounds out those shoulders, then he'll have a very good physique on stage. Absolutely.
I mean, his body looks like a true natural body. Naturals have usually bigger chests, big arms, smaller shoulders, small delts. He looks like a real natural to me with incredible genetics for muscle building.
With that back double, he'd be silly to go in men's physique. That's a waste.
But the.
I get it.
Go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
I think he'll do like 2 men's physique shows and then he'll be too big and go to
bodybuilding.
He doesn't even have a shape for physique. He has bigger, like Steve was saying. He has bigger obliques. He would be better off doing bodybuilding.
Yeah, bodybuilding, right? That's what I saw. When I was looking at it, I was like, this guy could be a good bodybuilder. But the one thing I want to comment on, he's 27 years old. And I would just say, like, if I had these kind of genetics, I wouldn't have waited till 27 to begin using gear because growth hormone does not work so well at that age. If you ever wanted to be a bodybuilder, I know you don't, you just want to be in men's physique. But you could be a bodybuilder. I really believe so.
He's saying he's a lifetime natural. Does that mean he never wants to ever get on gear, or he's just a natural right now?
I think up to this point.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
I always laugh when they say, I'm sub 80 years old and I'm lifetime natural because never say never. And going forward, there's going to be some changes. So up until this point, I've been drug free. And then maybe when you're a little bit older, you go into hormone and gain train. Is this guy also natural?
Bostin, what was his name?
That's Daniel, yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, so there's a couple of people that knew you that sent in messages. So he says he's 6'3", 238, 225, 6 years total lifting, 3 bodybuilding. His squat and deadlift are good, and bench is good. Fascinating. Oh, I love that tattoo. It's such an interesting placing. The tiger. Wow.
He's 6'4".
Yeah, he's very
tall. He's very tall. But if you can fill out that frame, you could a little bit of Dennis Wolf. Shape.
So he didn't want me to tell you, but I'll tell you now. He's actually a client of mine. I trained him for his first show. He actually did very well his first show in the novice.
No, what I was going to comment on is he has like an amazing structure.
I
agree.
Amazing structure. Like if you have that good of a structure, I think to some degree the muscle doesn't matter as much. Your waist is really thin. You have wide clavicles. What do you guys think?
But get this, Leo. He's the most inconsistent guy ever. He'll check in every couple weeks, and then I won't hear from him. So he's doing a show, and he promised me he's like 24 weeks out or something crazy, 20 weeks out. So he promised me he will be 100% because consistency is his biggest issue.
Oh, so there's a lot more left in the tank then, huh?
Oh yeah.
If he's like this inconsistent, then he's gonna do some damage if he puts everything in place. Some guys just it's a slow and steady progression for them to really get the meals down and the training down and all that stuff. And then once they really put everything into place and live like a full-time bodybuilder, they make a tremendous amount of progress.
So I picked the last one I wanted for us to review. I picked somebody that I thought maybe has less good genetics. He mentions he thinks he has good muscle building genetics, but horrible fat loss genetics. He said in the first pick, he was his biggest at 245 to 250 at 6'3". He puts on muscle easily. So he's been training for 4.5 years. First year was natural, then he did SARMs, and then he went on TRT plus SARMs, then began blasting and cruising. So I'm assuming he's been blasting and cruising for 2 years, and that's why, from where I want to make my comments. So first of all, why do people lower their shorts? Like I'm not. By the way, I'm not criticizing the gentleman who sent it to the. But what is this? It's a very, very awkward kind of thing.
He's trying to show the V line.
It's not right. The V line is not that important. It's
for Tinder. It's for Tinder,
it's not even for. But so here you can see his size a little bit. He has big arms, but what strikes
he looks like somebody who actually has a difficult time gaining weight and not a difficult time getting lean. But he said he had a difficult time getting lean and easy to gain weight. So where are the 250 pound pictures where he's off season?
So this is him 6'3", 250. So that's what I took, Steve. I saw him pretty lean. And my impression was if you've been cycling for 2 years and you're bodybuilding, maybe you have similar genetics to me. You can't gain that much muscle. I mean, I never bodybuilded, but I would imagine if I took it seriously bodybuilding, I'd look somewhat like that. It's not about the muscle shape, but he's not very big, right? For 2 years. Not yet. 4 years training and 2 years on steroids?
I mean, if he's always trying to stay lean, like he has a difficulty to stay lean, right? He's probably chronically under eating. If he feels that it's easy to get fat and difficult to get lean, but all he does is shows pictures where he's lean, he's probably chronically under eating, and just slowly increasing the calories with 10% increments will actually make him grow lean. So you do like a recomp.
This is Greg Doucette's tank top that he wears in the.
Is it?
Yeah, okay. Harder than last time. Okay, that's cool.
All right. So he needs to go harder than the last time on his caloric intake. Slowly, not every day, but over like 2 weeks, you can 10% increase, and you go by how your body fat changes and how your strength progresses. But I think this guy with a proper off-season, slow and steady, carefully manipulated, he can be very, very big also.
But let's your analysis is so good, Steve. I didn't even think of that. He's mentioning that he has difficult time losing weight, and clearly he's very low body fat in most of the pictures. So maybe he's somebody that is under eating and not giving himself a chance. But if that's not the case, then you could say potentially you don't have the best genetics for building muscle. If you've been you've been training for 4 years and you've been using steroids for 2 years, and you're not much bigger than that, and you're trying to be big, then you don't have the best genetics for it,
To be honest, I've only seen maybe 2 non-responders in my life where you just do everything you can and you really crank up the food and then the drugs to a certain extent while keeping them healthy, and nothing happens. I've only seen it twice.
I mean, but the thing is, some people respond so much better, and other people respond. like the white guy, black guy phenomenon. Black people usually need less milligrams, but that's true within also races and within people. And some people will look like they don't have good genetics until they touch a hormone, and then they just blow up completely.
Yeah, that's kind of what happened to me.
Oh, really? You like that, huh, Steve?
Yeah, I look pretty average, and I trained, but I didn't see a career in bodybuilding, so I was, doing the consultancy work. And then I figured, I want to see what all the fuss is about. And my first cycle was 250 milligrams a test. And I grew. I started growing finally.
Fascinating.
And then I had a growth hormone and I grew a lot faster, a lot more.
That's why you like the growth hormone so much. Steve is a big fan of growth hormone, by the way.
Yes, I'm off it now, though.
I don't know how you sleep. We'll talk about that later. But okay, so back to the cycle review section. So this one I just wanted, it's a short one. Mikha said, thoughts on test-only cycles after the first one. Can you keep improving if all the other variables are on point? What do you guys think?
Bostin, take it away.
I'll let Steve answer that one.
Oh, for me first? Okay. Well, I love test-only cycles. It seems to be the easiest to manipulate health and blood work. Keep that in range with myself and most of my clients. It's available as a pharmaceutical, so you don't have to worry about the synthetic carrier oils. And then all you have to do really is manage hair loss if occurring, or manage acne if occurring. And gynecomastia is very easy to manage just by keeping your estrogen in range. But of course, you can still get hormonal fluctuations contributing to acne. And if you convert a lot to dehydrated testosterone, then of course you have to manage that with another ancillary medication. So I feel that if you slowly increase your strength, slowly increase your calories, and slowly increase your testosterone over the course of like 2 years, you can look phenomenal.
I agree.
Phenomenal. And I've reproduced this with clients maybe hundreds of times. Yeah, they come to me because they want to do test only. They're not interested in primo or boldenone or trenbolone or masterone or nandrolone. So we just handicap it. Test, calories, and progressive overload. And they look great. Do they have phenomenally thin skin? No, you need a little bit goodies on top. But for the off season, I wrote an entire ebook about this called the Off-Season Cycles with Bioidentical Hormones. I'll send it to you, Bostin, also, so you can give me your honest feedback. It's just using test GH insulin.
Yeah, well, that's of course, but you bring in a lot more variables there. But just the test, we can say, as long as you don't overload yourself in the beginning. If you start with 2 grams, there isn't that far for you to go, and you'll stop getting the same results from testosterone eventually. But if you start with, like Bostin recommends, 500 milligrams of test or something like that, and you increase it by 250 every 3-4 months or something like that, just like Steve said, it'll get testosterone. In my opinion, testosterone will get you strong and large. You just won't have that shape, and it won't get horny. Yeah, that too is, of course. Well, but the problem with that, you desensitize to it, and then if you're using very high doses, it becomes difficult when you lower the dose. What do you think, Bostin? You can keep progressing on test for a while?
I'm with Leo on that. So test is going to build muscle, so you're going to have a bigger bodybuilder. So like Steve said, if you continually to just bring the test up when you need to, when you hit a plateau, 100%, you'll continue to grow. But most people that don't have those dry genetics with their physiques, they can continue to put on muscle with tests, but they're not going to have the greatest hardness. They're not going to have the greatest, and then that's when things come in, like adding primo in would help, adding something like EQ. So it'll 100% put on lean muscle, but it's not going to give you that polished look by any means.
Exactly. And also you won't gain muscle as fast as if you used like half the test and combine and made the rest out of NPP or EQ or something like that. Obviously. Yeah. But you still
need something for synergy.
Yeah, the synergy. Just like you said, Steve, with the growth hormone and insulin. So there's a bit of a longer one. AW Fitness Lover says, this will be awesome. So my cycle, 750 tests, 600 EQ, 300 NPP, and AI twice a week, keeping estrogen at 40 for recomp. He said, is there any benefit for the muscular gain of NPP at 300? Should I drop NPP and up the test to 1,000 from 750? What do you guys think? This would be a 20-week cycle. What do you think, Bostin?
Okay, well, this cycle is something that I've designed for many of my clients. I love this. I love 750 tests, 600 EQ, 300 NPP. If his estrogen is at 40, using an anti-estrogen twice a week, I would bring it up to 3 times a week. I would want it a little lower. I would do a half mg 3 times a week on the cycle, or half mg every other day
to get less side effects.
Yeah, get the estrogen down lower than 40. The only problem that I do not like about this cycle is he's saying that it would be a 20-week cycle. I wouldn't run this cycle longer than 8 weeks personally.
You'll adapt to the compounds, right?
And let's switch compounds. For instance, if he's shooting all these compounds 3 times a week, let's say if he's doing 250 tests, 250 tests, and then like 200 EQ, and then 100 MPP every other day, or 3 times a week, I would switch the cycle in 8 weeks.
So like Primo or something, like switch the EQ.
Correct. I would even switch the test esters from like SUST, or if he was using test E, I would switch them to SIP, and I would replace EQ with something like DHB or DECA, and then I would replace the NPP with maybe something like Masteron and Enthate or something like that.
Good points. What about you, Steve?
I would start a little bit lower dosages and just, again, build up your dosages as you stagnate, because during a recomp, he's probably in a caloric restrictive state, but he should still get a little bit of a muscle memory in the beginning of starting a cycle, assuming that he's starting a cycle and he's not coming from one cycle to the other or doing a cruise in between, right? So the starting point also determines where he's at. And maybe start a little bit lower, then increase or switch compounds as required. Right? Yeah. I don't think it's, let's say he's coming from a cruise on 250 milligrams of testosterone, and he jumps into the cycle with his 1600 milligrams off the bat, might also induce some side effects. And maybe it might be better to keep the estrogen a little bit lower, maybe 25 picograms per milliliter, or change the ratio between testosterone to boldenone, because boldenone also has some properties to keep estradiol conversion to a minimum. So maybe 700 tests, or let's say 500 tests, 500 boldenone, 200 NPP or 100 NPP, and then just adjust based on that.
Yeah, but it just depends what his recent gear history is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If he's been high dosages for years, that's not going to do much.
No, of course. So there's so many factors that contribute. It's caloric intake, and but it does look like a solid cycle. But maybe after a couple of weeks, he needs to change it. You know, I personally don't believe in changing the esters around, because I feel that everybody has a unique response to particular esters. Because the esterases, everybody has like a little different profile on how they metabolize the enanthate or the endocyanate or the propionate. That's why some guys respond very well to propionate and not very well to enanthate, because their physiological esterases are different.
If that's true, but I'm just hypothesizing, but even the liver enzymes that metabolize these things, they react to us using the drugs, so that potentially Bostin may be right. I'm like you, Steve. I don't believe in changing the ester of testosterone, but when you were talking about it just now, I realized there is a metabolism of the esters also that could be adapted to. So Bostin might be right.
That's why I changed up. And you know who I learned that from was Mike Arnold. A lot of these top guys switch up things. And you know, like I said, I can't tell you anything scientifically, but it just makes sense to me that if you're using one ester of something for a while, your body's going to get used to it and to switch it up. I'm big on that. Like I'll do like cypionate for 6 to 8 weeks, propionate for 6 to 8 weeks, sustain, you know what I mean? And, that's a big difference too.
But the way to synopsize what Steve said is, and I wish this could become a slogan of the channel, you can always take more drugs. You can't untake what you're taking. So if you start you can always start at 350 and go to 500 and then go to 750. So there's never any harm in starting lower. You know, you can just extend it a little bit. And then go ahead.
Yeah, it's also about being patient, you know, because if you go on testosterone enanthate and within the 2 weeks, first 2 weeks, you're not very happy with the results, well, serum concentrations are still building. So give it a month. That's true. I know guys that every 2 weeks I'm going to bump up the dose. So it's not even building up, you know, it's like hyperbolic, you know, that you're increasing the dose now.
So the other thing about estrogen being low, of course, I don't like that personally because I'm interested in estrogen for health effects, but there's clear valid reason for this here, because as you know, NPP will be signaling at the progesterone receptor, and then you have the estrogen a bit higher, so that will raise your prolactin more. Prolactin raises from estrogen and progesterone signaling. And the final thing I want to mention, his question about NPP, I would never, if your goal is for the muscle recomp and that stuff, I would never raise the test to 1,000 and remove the NPP. Here you have a matrix going on. We don't know exactly what EQ does exactly, but we know there's something progestogenic here. And if you remove that, progesterone is the anabolic female hormone. So when you remove that, you dramatically will reduce the benefits of the cycle. Plus,
like if he did like 1,500 tests and EQ, his physique would look way better with lower tests with that added NPP.
Yeah.
And probably gain muscle more as well. So this guy, IKC, says, why do long esters consistently seem to give worse side effects than the same milligram of short esters? So what do you think about that, Steve? Do they? Because short esters often have more solvents.
You said long esters give worse side effects, right? So I think it's just injection frequency. People think that because they're going enanthate or cypionate or undecanoate or undecilonate that they can get away with once a week, twice a week injections. But it's still within 1 or 2 days, a large portion of the active pharmaceutical ingredient is absorbed from the injection depot, regardless of carrier oil being used. So if you inject a lower dose a little bit more frequently, maybe treat your enanthate or cypionate as a propionate or acetate and inject every other day or every day, you get very stable serum concentrations. And then the side effects just kind of go away.
What do you think, Bostin?
Well, yeah, so long esters consistently seem to give worse side effects, probably due to them overlapping, like it building up in your system, you know what I mean? So
that also be the case. Yeah.
That's probably why if you get side effects on trenacetate, you probably will get worse side effects on trenanenthate. That's just how it goes, because it's something that it kind of builds up in your system. And then when you come off of it, it takes longer to get out of your system. So you're going to have the side effects longer too.
Yeah, especially trenanenthate.
But yeah, that's my answer to that.
So he says he's planning to brew a 50-50 Trenase Masteron prop test prop blend for use for his next context prep. He is asking Steve, because Steve knows a lot about carrier oils, and solvents. What's the maximum ethyl oleate percentage I should use, and which carrier oil will have the least probability of tren cough or other negative side effects? I know he's not a fan of grapeseed oil. What do you think?
I'm a fan of grapeseed oil because it's organic.
I thought you were, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, grapeseed, cottonseed, it's all good with me. Anything organic is fine besides Rothschilds oil, which is refined peanut oil and can still cause inflammation. I think the maximum ethyl oleate you can use is 0 milligrams or 0%. That would be the ideal scenario. Right, so a lot of these underground labs, they say grapeseed oil, right? At the excipients, or they say excipients quantity sufficient, which is a red flag. You should avoid those labs. So if they say grapeseed oil, they might also add in 10 milligram or 10%, 20% of ethyl oleate plus 20% benzyl benzoate and then 2 to 5% benzyl alcohol. So
So ethyl oleate is the one you'd get away from the most out of those solvents.
I would stay away from anything synthetic. Ethyl oleate I would not use. I would rather use 30% benzyl benzoate, which doesn't cause systemic inflammation and is being used in pharmaceutical compounds. But ethyl oleate is only improved here in Asia. And I just see...
Ethyl oleate can't be healthy. That shit eats my rubber stoppers up.
Exactly. Exactly. That's why it's all produced in ampules. And because the ampules is glass, right? So you can't see that it's dissolving the stopper. But I've used pharmaceutical grade products here in Asia in ethyl oleate, and you preload your syringes, and then from the third injection onwards, the rubber is just dissolving. You see like little chunks just slowly going.
That should happen. One of these sources sent me some ethyl oleate because it helps with the pain with shots. So I would, when I was using painful stuff, I'd put like a half cc ethyl oleate and then microwave it for a little bit to mix it, dude. That shit ate through like the rubber stopper at top. It got fat. It literally turned fat, and it was so bad.
It's like a pumped pussy. That's what it
looks like. Yeah, it looked like a pumped pussy. Exactly.
The propylene glycol and the migliol and all that stuff, your glycol, it all does the same thing to the stopper. So if it does that to the stopper, imagine what it's doing to the inside of your body.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. Yeah, it's solving your body.
And now people think, I can use it for side enhancement. I get that pump pussy effect in my biceps.
That's not the way to go. Okay, so This guy says it's his first AAS cycle. He's only done SARMs before. He seems to be a hyper responder, and therefore his dosages he's planned aren't particularly high. Now, Bostin, he wants to comment on this. He wants to take as a first cycle 4 months of 250 test E, and then in the last... he says after the first 8 weeks, he wants to use 10 to 20 milligrams of the Balkan Anavar, which is a potent Anavar. He says he'll be cutting and he wants to look like Z's, although he says this is a bit cringe. And then he said, I forgot to mention, it's also for well-being and energy during university, and I'm 22. So, some of you, what a nice guy. He said nice things to us, boss. So what do you think, Boston, about using 250 as a first cycle?
So the 250 test, I would never ever have anyone do anything under. I know Steve will disagree, but
That's what I did.
I just don't understand that. Like I don't get it.
I don't get it either. Yeah.
Yeah, like if
So
you're
if you were gonna use
if you're old
250,
as fuck, if you're old as fuck, like 50, 60, you'll get a benefit from it. But if you're like 20s and 30s, you may get a little bit of benefit from it, but not enough to justify not being natural. You know what I mean? Like I would at least run 500 tests, but I wouldn't run it like for 20 weeks or whatever, like he's saying. And then the Anavar, I don't know. I 10 mgs of Anavar for a dude. I don't know.
Now say he's a hyper responder. In that case, brother, Vaxtgranaten, why don't you, instead of injecting testosterone, you don't even mention using HCG. So you're about to cut off all supply to your gonads from your brain. You're going to tell your balls to shut down for 4 months, bro. You're never going to fully recover from that, by the way. But let me comment, if you're going to do that, why didn't you use HCG first? If you're such a hyper responder, if you use a bit of HCG, you'll get that 250 tests a week just from the HCG, and you don't lose your balls.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
No, I did this with many of my clients.
Right. You probably get better gains off of HCG every other day.
Yeah. And the incentive to spread the love around, because HCG is a natural, makes you freaking horny.
Of course, yeah, because it's naturally around your gonads. And then you could, if you're on HCG, you could take that Anavar. You wouldn't lose any because you're replacing the signal to your gonads. You could try the Anavar as your first cycle by itself.
Well, the problem is still the Anavar will downregulate the HP. Right, the first two steps.
Yeah, it will it will affect the hypothalamus, but then you're just having a gap from your brain to your balls, but your balls are still working.
Yeah, so, that's the most important part.
Yeah, because that part is quicker to recover.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I would, let's say he does the ACG first, like 4 weeks. You know, I mentioned that protocol on my YouTube channel where you do 100 IUs ACG for 1 week, 3 times per week. For 1 week, and then you bump it to 250 and then 500 and 1,000, and you just see where you feel good. You do your blood work, see what the potential is of your testosterone, and then base your cycle, like your testosterone based on that, because you want to be over of what you can produce naturally. But maybe you can only produce, 500 nanograms per deciliter natural, and then 250 milligrams of test is going to be double of what he's producing.
Now, it depends on how quickly he metabolizes the testosterone. If he's a quick metabolizer like myself, it might not do much for you. But what you could do, brother, is you could go do a blood test, check your testosterone level and your luteinizing hormone. If your luteinizing hormone is like an 8 or a 9, you might not get out of much out of a regular HCG dose. But if your luteinizing hormone is a 6 or a 7 or a 5, and you have your testosterone level, then all you got to do is the next week or 2 weeks later. Now, Steve disagrees on dosages for HCG than I do. What I would use is 1,500 units minimum every other day, and then I would get my blood work tested in 2 weeks or so and see what my testosterone level is. If it's outshot my last testosterone level, then I know I'm more than replacing LH. So now I'm going super physiologic, and then I can choose from that dose. Okay, 1,000 or 1,000 units or 1,500 replace my test. Now I can do a cycle of 2,500, something like that, But my point is, I agree with Bostin. I mean, now if you're already on HCG and you're not sacrificing your balls, then I could understand using even 100 milligrams of testosterone in addition. But if you're sacrificing your balls for that, I don't get it.
Leo, so the HCG, I don't think you would get much results if you run it at a super low dose. I think the 1,500 every other day or 3 times a week. But now, would you run a slight anti-estrogen every like 0.25 mix of Arimidex every shot?
You'd have to, because around your Leydig and Sertoli cells in your gonads, there's a lot of aromatase expression. So that's why when you take HCG, a lot of the testosterone produced converts to estrogen much more than elsewhere in your body. So if you were trying to get benefits from this, you'd have to limit that estradiol in your blood test. So what you do is you take a certain amount of an aromatase inhibitor. Then on that first blood test, you check your estradiol and try to get it back below 40, between 20 and 40. So that way the HCG actually has its impact of being able to raise your testosterone.
It doesn't downregulate the LH and FSH response.
Exactly.
I feel like the aromatase inhibitor would also help you raise your natural free testosterone levels as well during the process.
Well, you're already replacing the signal from your brain, but it would help you prevent more like dysfunction in your brain, like Steve was saying, from the hypothalamus estrogen receptors, for sure. So, what the hell? Okay, so Randy says, next cycle for building steady lean mass, I'll be using 2 units of GH every other day that's a great approach to lessen metabolic syndrome or insulin insensitivity from the GH. So first 4 weeks he's doing test E350. He's always doing, weeks 1 through 10 is 350 test. He switches from D-bol to T-bol, which should not be milligram per milligram the same. Maybe you're taking too much Dianabol. And then Mastron 200 and he switches to Primo 200. And then later he raises the test and raises the Primo and drops the oral. And then he says he'll be following Steve's electrolyte protocol for his GH, as well as trying to stay around 10 to 12% body fat. He mixed Primo and Mast with the orals to contain the water retention and estrogen during the cycle. What do you guys think about this?
I would switch it around. Start with the test in Primo, and then add in the Renadyl, then add in the Dianabol at the end to get like past the plateau. The dosages would change obviously, but you can make a lot of progress on 350 test and 200 on 350 Primo. And then, when you start to stagnate, maybe you throw in an oral on top. That's usually how I finish most of the off seasons. An oral for 4 weeks to really, set a new baseline in strength and really push past the plateaus. And most times after orals, you don't really feel like eating anymore anyway, even with the Dianabol. And then you call it quits. Your off season is over.
What do you think, Bostin?
The only cycle out of this that I would ever have anyone do is that the D, week 11 through 16.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here are my what are you going to say something, Bostin?
Yeah, so he's only going to be on fucking Mastron for 4 weeks. Who knows if it's Mastron and Enthate, and who knows if it's Mastron propionate? Is he shooting it twice a week, or is he shooting it every other day? It's hard to really give but the only cycle that I don't ever recommend is the D one.
Yeah. So my thought was I would never use Dianabol at 40 milligrams every day for 4 weeks. That is a highly liver toxic compound that does cause liver cancers, has done so in the past. It has a high residence time in the liver, and it is potently androgenic. It is very dangerous. If you do use Dianabol or something like that weeks in a row, you better be a bodybuilder and going to competition. And in that case, to be honest, you'll be running Anadrol because you'll be wanting to hold, retain glycogen, all this kind of stuff. So, in my opinion, that should never be done more than 2 days in a row or more than 4 days a week. If you're going to do days on a row, and it should be on your workout days, if anything. Then the Turinabol. I've never used it, but I know it's far weaker than Dianabol. So the order of these drugs is a little off. And really, if anything, I would rather mix the Turinabol in the same weeks with the Dianabol so I don't adapt to the Dianabol, so I can use it much longer. So I could use my Dianabol on my hardest days and Turinabol on the other days, maybe, for example.
I would still do that, maybe 20 milligrams Dianabol and 40 milligrams Turinabol. I feel like it's half as potent on a milligram for milligram basis.
I mean, I used at the end of my lifting, honestly, when I used to use Anadrol, I would use 50 milligrams. But when I used Dianabol, I would use, of course, I was using like the Tide, the pink ones, but I was using 20 milligrams. Yeah, really, 20 milligrams was enough to get a big thing out of the workout. And then,
I know.
And then the Mastron and the Primo, personally, I don't like to add those things to deal with estrogen. If you're adding them to be harder and look good, that's one thing. But if you're trying to deal with estrogen, deal with estrogen. Use aromatase inhibitor. That's... it'll affect your blood, I think. Also, these probably have effects on the mineralocorticoid receptors because when I use an AI with Dianabol, I'm still a bit bloated. Do you guys notice that?
For sure, yeah.
For sure. You're not going to ever avoid that.
It's
because
weird.
The methyl estradiol is far more potent and less subject to metabolization, so it stays in the system far longer. That's why I don't like the Dianabol kickstart. I mean, just be patient and then let everything build up over 4 weeks, because it will take a while before muscle memory kicks in and all the metabolic processes really starts when you go back on a proper cycle. So just be patient. Take the Dianabol if you want to take it at the end to push you past plateaus. And because it is liver toxic and very androgenic at certain points, you want to take some time off and address your health afterwards. That's why I never do orals in the beginning. I always do orals last. There's a coach out there that recommends halo testing at the beginning of a cycle. Bostin, do you know about this?
No, I did not. Is he a well-known coach?
He's very well known.
Oh. Really? Never heard of that.
I heard several of his clients say, I never understood why this coach wants to do halo in the beginning. And he would just say, just get some androgens in you.
What are his initials? What are his initials?
CA.
CA. Okay. Oh, wow. I know. That's obvious to me, but that's shocking to me.
That's what I talked to several of his clients, and they all said the same thing. I don't understand what a halotestin is in the beginning. Makes me feel like shit.
He's not good with anabolics though. Like he shoots in the dark with that. He's more of a nutrition.
Probably, yeah. But yeah, he's very good with nutrition. His clients obviously win. It's just always surprising to me. I tried to do it with one client, but it didn't really work. It didn't really play out. So I do orals at the end, and then after that, there's a down period to address health because they all detract from your health to a certain extent.
So the Blood Lord is a huge support of the channel, Bostin, and I really love this guy.
That's Derek, dude. That's the guy that does my pre-workout.
No way, he's awesome. I really like this guy, and he's been following for a while. So he says this is his current cycle for recomp cut. He has some nerve damage also from an arm injury. He says he's taking Test E 180 every 4 days. That's interesting. Thanks to Steve. And then he says he's taking T3 at 37.5 micrograms. He's taking 1.4 units of GH upon waking, fasted pre-workout. He's taking 700 micrograms of frag, which Bostin, last episode you mentioned 250 before workouts, but he's doing it pre-bed in a huge dose.
Yeah, switch that around, the GH and the frag.
Right? I know, that's exactly right. So and is the frag too much of a dose in one time, Bostin?
100%.
It's a waste, right? Okay.
I would say the max dose in one dose you want to do is 500 mcgs.
Yeah.
Bro, what in the world is TB? 5 milligram every 4 days.
TB 500, I guess.
500.
Oh,
tuberculosis.
Okay, so I didn't know what it is. I was like tuberculosis. Anyway.
Yeah.
So,
thymosin beta.
Oh, he's taking TB and BPC 500. Yeah. So he's using this in his arm, I guess, to regrow the nerves. Well, that's not the best way to do that for sure. No, and then, I mean, it is probably useful, but not the best way. And then Cialis, 25 milligrams Monday through Friday. Attempting to acquire 5. No, bro, you get a diamond scale and you cut the pill up. You can do that easily. You don't have to mega dose this drug, which is really ineffective.
You said diamond scale and not cocaine scale.
Yeah, we call it a diamond scale. I don't use cocaine. So anyway, further elaboration. He said, I've resigned myself to full hormone replacement, generally use 25 micrograms of T3 and 100 micrograms of LT4. GH and frag are as such because each vial provides 7 days at those doses. I use frag in the evening because I use GH and I selected GH for fast training. Okay, so what do you guys think about this?
Oh, it's I've helped Eric before with his diets and stuff, but this is never, this is a kind of bizarre cycle, but I'll let Steve say.
So I like the testosterone inundating castor oil because it has a much more stable serum concentrations, and castor oil stays in the depot a little bit longer. So, every injections every 4 days sufficient, and he's clearly not using an aromatase inhibitor. So I'm assuming that his testosterone and estradiol concentrations are good, and his inflammatory markers are basically 0.1, 0.5 milligrams per liter on the high sensitivity C-reactive protein. I do feel that this thyroid is a little bit too high for the dose of testosterone that he's on. I would just do replacement, or maybe look into Armor thyroid. What is it? 25 micrograms T4 and 12.5 micrograms T3. It's probably sufficient. Really, T3 you don't want to overdo when you're on hormone replacement. Assuming this is a generous hormone replacement for bodybuilders, so that would be what, 200. Let's say it's 250 a week, 250 milligrams of test. I would not do 37.5 micrograms of T4 plus 100 micrograms of 37.5 micrograms T3 and maybe, T4
it's a low
on
androgen
top.
Dose, basically. It's a very low androgen.
Yeah, it's too low. Yeah, it's too low. And of course, the growth hormone will add in a little bit of anabolism on top. But I mean, if he's trying to improve connective tissue health, then the T3 is also not going to help because it's probably going to be catabolic in connective tissue. So the TB500 and the BPC is not really going to shine. The growth hormone is fine. I would still take it before bed to increase IGF-1 and improve sleep. And take the frag 250, 500 at maximum before fasted cardio to improve lipolysis. And then the TB500 and the BPC, I would do maybe 500 micrograms to a milligram per day on each. Intramuscular as close to the site of injury as possible, and make sure you get your collagen protein with that.
Well, no, his injury is nerve damage, he says.
Oh, it's nerve damage, right? So for nerve damage, it's Yeah, I would hand it over to Leo about the brain-derived nootropic factor.
Yeah, so let's discuss this quickly. So the T3, now this is interesting. He mentioned before he used to use 100 micrograms of T4, and now the T4 is mysteriously missing here. So if you are somebody that's on thyroid replacement, you need the T4 to turn off your TSH. Your TSH does not respond to the T3 as well as the T4. But as you guys know, and the research shows, not a lot of the T4 is really converted into T3 when you supplement with it. So sometimes if you have a nice doctor, they'll give you armor thyroid like Steve mentioned, or desiccated thyroid, or you could just do exactly what you were doing before, which is 100 micrograms of T4 plus the 25 micrograms of T3. I also feel like now I have a client who's using 50 micrograms of T3 separated during the day, but it's really, when I do that, my heart rate really elevates.
Yeah.
And T3 agonizes the thyroid receptor alpha as well as the beta receptor, and the alpha receptor has effects on the cardiac muscle. And that's the main concern with using a lot of T3, so that's something to be concerned about. Just watch your heart rate, I think, and there's not medical advice, of course,
and raises sexual binding globulin concentrations. So this dose of testosterone might be not high enough to keep that in a favorable range, and the longer he does that, it might suppress libido by binding up too much testosterone.
Bro, do you know speculating. Did you see the messages I sent in the Derek group text? So I just discovered that T3 and T4 are involved in hair development, in pigmentation, as well as, shockingly, T4 seems to inhibit TGF beta, that transforming growth factor beta that's part of the fibrosis in the scalp. So I had a new idea of topical T4 or topical GC1 to protect the hair from hair loss as well as graying of hair.
And
but anyway,
it might actually work, because even though the molecular weight of T4 and T3 is a little bit too high for transdermal absorption, but because you have so much follicles, it might just go in there. Again, just speculating, but it might just go through the follicles instead of the actual, what is it, epidermis, dermis?
I don't know, but I'm very curious, because the side effect profile, I mean, what is it going to be? It's going to be much lighter than these other things we're using.
For sure.
But so about I agree with Steve, of course, you're using the frag for fat loss. So you want to use that in the morning. The frag doesn't cause the insulin resistance as much, or I don't know how much it does, but definitely not as much as real GH. And you take the GH before bed because you're not eating while you're asleep. So you get the least insulin insensitivity. And then the TB and BPC, you're taking that there for angiogenesis and other growth factors. You could do a lot of things for that. But the thing that most would help is Cerebral Lysine, which actually has nerve growth factor in it directly. So you're injecting, instead of injecting something that promotes blood vessel formation that then brings about growth factors downstream, you're injecting the literal growth factors. And I personally inject my Cerebral Lysine in muscles that I'm trying to heal nerve damage in, actually. So I've seen a lot of, if you combine Cerebral Lysine with growth hormone, which I recently did because of my finger and because of another thing also, it is an incredible multiplicative effect. I mean, the way you sleep is unbelievable. It's doing something interesting.
I want to know if Cerebral Lysine has some PE benefits.
Yes. PE. Maybe. I know. I was just talking about that.
Sensitivity, sensitivity.
I was just talking about that with some. Okay, that was the last one. All right. So the last thing I just want to do with you guys really briefly, I think every time we just review one blood work, although this time I put two, but we'll review one just maybe it could, every time we could teach one thing or learn something new. So you guys are in my way here. So
why do you select all the super tall guys? Everybody's like over 6 foot. I feel discriminated because Bostin is on the show, right?
Yeah, because I don't want Bostin to feel alone, because I'm 5'10" and you're around my height also. So
I'm 5'9".
We have to give, yeah. So this guy says a bit about his TRT. He's 250 pounds, 6'4", and that's all. Now, this is the interesting thing, though. I always try to find somebody's blood work that's a little bit interesting. So his LDL cholesterol, just around the perfect area. Beautiful. I mean, this guy has a protective polymorphism in his genes that is making this happen. It's an LDL receptor. It's something, unless he's vegan or doesn't eat saturated fats or eggs. So this is a really good sign. Your triglycerides are a little bit high. Probably indicates you have a small amount of insulin sensitivity, or you have a little bit of visceral fat, something like that. But look at that
non-alcoholic fatty liver, or inactivity, or carnitine deficiency.
So, but then come look at this TSH. So what is TSH? TSH is just like FSH. Every time I talk about FSH, I inject FSH every other day. What is FSH? FSH is the signal to your gonads to grow. TSH is the signal to your thyroid to grow. This is what Palumbo left for a long time. This is how his thyroid grew, and that's what scared me personally so much about thyroid cancer. So this is not very high. This is called subclinical hypothyroidism. So many doctors will not replace it. But you want to know why this is there. It could be that you've damaged your pituitary. It could be something temporary through, sometimes TSH goes up for various reasons. But if this stays like this, or if it's been like this on your blood work for a while, keep in mind, thyroid cancer incidence is on the rise around the world, and we're all at risk a little bit.
It's time to do an ultrasound on his thyroid gland and see what's going on. And of course, do a full metabolic panel with the free T4, free T3 total and reverse, right? And then there's another iodine uptake, I believe.
Yeah. I mean,
so that you just get the full thing done.
It's not so high that you would think. It's not like you see people with 10 and 15 all the time, but it's not so high. It just depends how long it's been like that, and how he's only 25 years old, So maybe it doesn't need
still,
help.
you don't want to leave it unaddressed, for a long period of time.
You would get peace of mind to do an ultrasound, see if you have nodules, and then figure out, look at your old blood tests, see if this declines on its own. Sometimes it does. If it doesn't, like Steve is saying, you have to take it seriously. So look at, this was the other thing I noticed about his blood work. I forgot what this is called. It's like red blood cell diameter.
Distribution width,
yeah.
It's the difference between the size of the red blood cells. So if they should all be uniform, same size with the same hemoglobin content. And then as micronutrient deficiencies occur, you see that some red blood cells get bigger and some get larger. So the differential is bigger. So now he's at 16.4%. So that indicates either an iron, vitamin B9, or vitamin B12 deficiency.
So Steve is right. It shows the diameter. So basically, you could have, if you had the range probably is around, it's written there. It's around 11 to 15. If you have something around 11, it indicates that your red blood cells are more homogeneous. They're similar size.
Right.
This is a shocking biomarker that's been really explored a lot in the last 10 years. It is it's interesting because it's an independent risk factor for mortality and for heart disease. And it cannot be controlled even if you use a regression analysis in those studies and you control C-reactive protein, micronutrient deficiencies. I'm not sure about micronutrient as much, but inflammation, so many things do not control for it. It's an independent risk factor, and we don't totally know why. Now, scientists hypothesize that, for example, if you have problems in erythropoiesis, you can start to, your red blood cells won't be produced as equally. And they also think that inflammation, cytokines could damage some of the red blood cells, but it's not so clear. And also, by the way, Steve, anemia sometimes, even if you control for anemia, only one case of anemia will be associated with it. A lot of the others aren't. Now, this is the shocking thing, though. I don't remember the numbers exactly, but if you go from 12 and above, every 1% increase here is associated with a dramatic increase in mortality, something I think over 10% more likely. So this is extremely concerning. This guy has something really wrong going on, and we don't know what it is exactly. This is a very high number. Makes you much more likely to die of a heart attack.
I think most of the cases that I've seen, the red cell distribution width goes up with more frequent blood donations. So that's why it always leads me to believe iron deficiency, because you lose so much iron through a blood donation, and then vitamin B9 and B12 are easily supplemented. A lot of people in the Western world are not deficient in B vitamins. So you see that with more frequent donation, well, his testosterone is high, so he's probably keeping his hematocrit under control with, donations. And then the iron gets lower and lower and lower.
Good point.
And then
if
the
it is
red cell
actually
distribution
overdonating, you're right. Yeah,
overdonation. Exactly. Yeah.
If he's overdonating, then that's different. Yeah.
You could also check, there's a specified test, which is called the red cell morphology. And because they can come in like a million different sizes. So you have like sickle cell anemia is like the red cells are such poorly shaped that they can't be absorbed, and that affects the red cell distribution width also because the shapes are so off. So there's a lot of things.
Creatinine and EGFR.
Yeah, that's good.
I would be jealous at 250 to have that creatinine. It's great.
Well, he's 25, right? So maybe 12 years from now, when he's dabbling with more stuff, his creatine. So the job here is to keep it like this.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, except for that, I mean, hopefully he's over donating, and that could explain it. But because he doesn't have anything else, for the audience to know, this is prostate specific antigen. This is one of the cancer markers. They often show it to you if you're a man. They don't test the other ones for you. CEA, CA19-9. There's several other ones. Just for your information. And estradiol is sort of the perfect area for sex drive, but maybe potentially not everything else. So he has great. Everything else is great except for that triglyceride slightly, the TSH, and then
his HDL.
His HDL. I mean, his LDL is so low, that I'm not so scared.
I think he can just get a freebie by letting his estrogen come up a little bit more, and then his HDL should come up also. But then again, concurrently his sexual binding globulin might come up. So.
Steve is obsessed with sex hormone binding globulin. I didn't know so much about it until I became friends with Steve, and I just keep learning more and more about sex hormone binding globulin.
You have all this stuff that say that sex hormone binding globulin is the devil, right? And it binds up all your tests and all the androgens that you don't get to the androgen receptor. You know how many sex drive consultations I have every week? Yeah.
Sex drive. You get a lot of consultation on sex drive.
Oh, really? Unbelievable! I feel bad for. Yeah, I know. Both of us.
Yeah.
Both of us like it. Post-finasteride syndrome and all that stuff. They come to you and me, right? Yeah. So I see so much sex drive issues, and in a lot of cases, the sexual hormone binding globulin is just crushed to 10 nanomoles per liter or less. And then that's why I made a whole video about it, because not everybody can afford us. Just how to increase your sex hormone binding globulin. And then you see the messages a month later. I said, dude, you saved my sex life. All right. So I sent him, give a couple pumps for good old Coach Steve. So we'll start with the questions for this week. So we have some good questions. The Dolce diet. Who is Mike Dolce, by the way, a friend of mine. I'd love if you guys would also subscribe to his channel if you aren't already. Yeah. And if you don't follow the Biohacking and MMA podcast, I highly recommend it. We're just on our third or so episode, but it's going to get better and better. I'm trying to study MMA, and let's see if we can. I don't know what those MMA guys are really doing PED wise, but let's see if we can influence that sport also. It will be interesting. So Dolce says, put together a Wata compliant supplement stack for MMA fighters to retain lean tissue, drop body fat, increase cardiovascular capacity, and prolong muscle exertion. Might be a fun twist. My reaction to this is like everything. There's a lot of things that could be used in terms of supplements. Steve has a video on this, don't you? Yeah, I have like a Wata approved half natty stack with things that are not on the Wata doping list directly. It should be, it should be safe to take them, but you might still not pass the doping test. Because it will skew, like if you take a dipeptidyl peptidase 4 inhibitor, right, which inhibits the breakdown of growth factors. So that's epidermal growth factor, insulin, IGF-1, brain-derived neurotropic factor, a growth hormone releasing hormone, right? Wow. So you upregulate all the growth factors. It might still cause you to fail the test because of metabolites. It's not on the list, but you might pop for something else. And it's, as far as I know, that's not been researched. I know people that use the dipeptidyl peptidase 4 inhibitor and pass the test, but they don't always test for everything. And it highly depends on which lab your results are being sent to, right? Like the one in Beijing, and there is the most scrutinous after the Beijing Olympics, and they're up to date on everything. But some of the other labs, which are WADA compliant, they're not as scrutinous as some of the other labs. So it really depends where your sample is sent. And then of course, tampering.
Now, I won't mention the drugs that I would think of because I want to actually try them on athletes, and I don't want the other athletes to know about them. But Steve knows we had some ideas in the group chat, so we'll think about some things in the future. So Morning Iron, also a support of the channel, he says, hypothetical: you are approached by an extremely wealthy client. For the purpose of a thought experiment, let's say he is 17 to 18 years old with the most beautiful genetics you've ever seen. Promising to make it worth your while, financially agrees to hire you with the following caveats. For the entirety of his career, you may select only 3 androgenic anabolic steroids in whatever dosages you wish. Second, you are to take this client on for the entirety of his career from off-season to contest in a cyclical fashion with the intent of maximizing 3 things: career length, contest success, and health. Think Flex Wheeler aesthetics, Dexter Jackson career length, Ronnie Coleman success, Jay Cutler career exit status. He says, no, GH, insulin, and peptides are all fair game. You're only limited with respect to AAS selection. Bostin, considering the goals at hand, which 3 AS agents would you choose, and how would you adjust the dosages each from off-season to contest and across the span of his career? Steve, same question. Leo, given Bostin and Steve's selections and the goals at hand, what pharmaceuticals, medical procedures, and other health practices would you mandate to maximize Bostin and Steve's client potential success? Who wants to start?
Test Primo Trend. Because I could get them ready for a show with those drugs, and I could grow them on those drugs.
Not a bad choice at all, actually. Yeah. What do you think, Steve?
I would say test Primo Halo.
Are you serious? Oh, for the competition.
For the competition, right? Because test and Primo you can use in the off season, and the Halo just adds the next level of competition like no other drug does, given that the guy's in shape. And I've actually prepped guys like this. Test Primo the entire way through. Right, and then you change the ratio between test and Primo, so you end up with a lot of Primo and not so much test anymore to keep the estrogen down. Because they're like, I don't want to use an aromatase inhibitor, I don't want to use Novadex, and I don't want to use this, and I don't want to use that. But I can be like a mental case for the last 2 weeks. It's all right, 40 milligrams of Halo testing it is at the end, you know?
Yeah, but if somebody wanted to look their best, I think they would look better on test and trend than test and Halo.
For sure, I think so. But
I think the entire way through, but maybe not on stage. I think there will be harder on stage with test Primo and then finishing it off with Halo. Test and finishing off with Halo.
Man. I think Trent is the ultimate pre-contest drug, but I mean, we all have opinions.
So how would you guys change your dosages from the off season to the on season if you're stuck with 3 drugs? It's an interesting question.
I'd run a gram of each.
Just all the time.
That's the cycle that I fucking am so mad that I never was able to run before I had my issues was a gram of test, a gram of Primo, a gram of Winstrol, a gram of Tren, a gram of Masteron, and then Halo at the end in my pre-contest cycle.
I almost ran an exact cycle compared to that in Dubai for no reason, barely working out.
I even bought these big ass jugs of like gear because I knew I was going to be shooting like 10 cc's a week of each. And I never got to that experiment, unfortunately.
Sounds like a good comp. That's what people, by the way, in the Middle East do. They mix like a gram of Masteron, a gram of Primo, a gram of Equipoise, gram of Deca, gram of Tren, 6 grams total, and they just look crazy.
Yeah, that's what I would do. I'm telling you. Yeah, something about that 1 gram of the drug. It's like a really good maximum benefit.
It's pretty crazy.
That's true.
And after a gram, you start. I don't know if there's any more. Positive. I knew a guy that ran 300 mgs of Tren daily. So what is that? That's 2,100 mgs a week.
I've tried it. I've tried 300.
I've done that. I've done it too, but not for a long enough period of time.
It's too much, I think. Honestly, it's not just the sleep, but like the nerves. You don't respond to it. I guess it doesn't affect you, but it affected me.
I was a maniac on a gram of Tren.
Yeah.
I was ready to fight at any chance, even when there was nobody around. 4 weeks I lasted.
That's funny. That's funny how drugs affect people differently.
Yeah.
So Tubecast says, Leo, would you ever mix L-tryptophan with an SSRI? So the concern with that is L-tryptophan, it doesn't pass the rate-limiting step in the synthesis of serotonin. But your diet, depending on what you eat, you may actually be less than the amount that you can produce of serotonin. So I actually do supplement with L-tryptophan. It makes a big difference, but it doesn't force my brain to get into the hyperserotonergic. Specifically, the concern is serotonin syndrome, which I've talked about many times on the podcast before. So Damon23 says, do you recognize adrenal fatigue, since the medical community seems to not think it that way and more of an adrenal insufficiency? What's your take on it, and how do you combat it if someone's always relying on stims? So it's not, I don't call it adrenal fatigue. There may be an insufficiency of so adrenals, your adrenals are one of the 3 places in your body that your body produces steroids. It produces, mainly cortisol, they're glucocorticoids. So you may have an insufficiency. So your body may respond, for example, if you're on androgens, you'll produce less cortisol than if you're not on androgens. Your body responds to knowing what you're taking and produces less of maybe adrenaline or cortisol eventually. But usually what I see with people that are stimulant addicts, who I've known many in my life, is a downregulation of their receptors. of the adrenaline receptors and dopamine receptors. So they feel less and get less. And so what you do is you go away from the stimulants instead of trying to get around it. That's the only way. Now you could block your adrenaline receptor with propranolol or something. You could block your dopamine receptor with Seroquel or something like that before bed a little bit during those few weeks you want to recover. It may speed up your recovery, but there's nothing around stopping doing it. Jordan.
So wait, let me talk a little bit more about this adrenal fatigue. So, even though it's not clinically recognized, there are cases post contest where a lot of people feel this adrenal insufficiency because they've overdone the stimulants and they completely downregulated their neurosteroid production, the DHEA and the pregnenolone, and those contribute to adrenal sufficiency and sensitivity at the receptor site. So if you go back onto something that's a little bit more bioidentical after a cutting phase or contest prep, you take all the stimulants out, the ephedrine and the Adderall and the caffeine and whatever else you were taking. You basically go no stimulants for a while and restore your neurosteroid production with an ACG or an HMG or supplementing DHA and pregnenolone. Usually within 2 or 3 weeks, everything feels normal again. And then you can reintroduce the coffee. But you have to abstain. Even ashwagandha root extract, in some cases it's beneficial, and in some cases it's not beneficial to restore this adrenal baseline.
I don't know if it is or not, but everything else I agree with what you said.
Yeah.
So Jordan X2 says, he asked a few questions and we didn't get to them last time, so I want to get to them. They're very good questions. So he says, hey Leo, heard from a podcast that apparently pinning any compound that is a substrate for aromatase subcutaneously will cause more aromatization to estradiol as it's directly in the fat. Sounds very odd to me. Your thoughts? What do you guys think?
I say it's bullshit. I first of all, why would you ever
don't shoot it in the fat in the first place, for God's sake.
Stupid as fuck, but no, I can't see it affecting estrogen anymore.
I guess
it's so localized. I mean, look at the surface. Let's say you do a microinjection subcutaneous, right? Look at the surface area. It's nothing, right? So that's where the aromatase enzyme activity would take place. If it goes systemic, that's a much higher surface area. So it's not going to do anything locally. But if it goes systemic, you get more aromatase activity. But if you're just high body fat, you get a lot more conversion of testosterone into estrogen. So I would just do intramuscular and deal with the aromatase activity with a dihydrotestosterone derivative or reducing your body fat levels. But I don't think subcutaneous has to do with anything. Now, if you pin insulin in the same spot over and over again, yes, you're going to get fat in that little area.
Yeah. And have you ever noticed pinning GH in one area, you lose fat there?
Never.
Ever noticed that?
A lot of people say that. I never had experience.
I tried it in a single area in my lower back and one side for a long time. I also tried it in chest, one side intramuscular, didn't change anything.
Yeah, I never got any effect like that. But I tell you what, it did help with fat loss in that area. Our favorite drug, FTTP.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say it, for God's sake. But
did you ever try Halios, the injectable clenbuterol with johimbine?
Yeah, I hate that stuff. It knotted me up like a motherfucker. I've tried it from a few. I still have a ton of that stuff. I never touch that stuff again.
You like
Throw it away.
Fuck
That's
that.
My opinion is I want to know why people are injecting in their fat. I don't understand. It's not because they're scared of needles. It's because these guys, I think, are using 22 gauge needles each time and don't realize, dude, that you can backload an insulin syringe and inject here on your chest and move it around each time. And it's painless and you don't need to inject. What are you going to inject? 3 cc's into your fat? You can't do that. So it's just 1 cc you're injecting, right? 1 cc in your chest. I don't do shoulders, but around your chest, that's very easy. You can move around. And
I'd agree with you, but when you're doing shit like me, when I was doing 9 cc's every other day.
But that guy's not doing 9 cc's in his fat, for God's sake. So, but yeah, if you do that, then you got to do those big injections every so often, and then the little ones at other times. But I think it may be possible, honestly. The body has weird metabolic processes locally in different places, but I don't think you'd notice it. But then he also says, heard from the same podcast that taking an AI with fish oil, of all things, or a meal containing fat will make it more effective. Is this true? First of all, obviously none of us have probably noticed this, but I want to comment on this because I had to go research it. I wasn't sure. I saw this last week and I was like, this is very curious. So letrozole is 99% orally bioavailable. Aromacin and Arimidex are over 95% bioavailable without food. Okay. Now, there is the idea that if you eat food, you may slow the function of the liver, which does a first pass metabolism on these drugs. So there's one paper showing maybe aromasin could be slightly more, have a bigger area under the curve pharmacokinetically if you ate it with food around breakfast. But otherwise, in fact, it's thought that it may reduce the absorption of letrozole. And certainly all of these things are over 95% bioavailable without food. So whoever's saying this, honestly, I'll be honest with you, is probably trying to pretend he knows stuff that he doesn't know. Honestly, it doesn't make any sense.
I know where this is coming from.
Not that guy. I don't think it's him. Imagine it's him.
It wouldn't surprise me because that guy always said that you
Everything
need to take your orals with fish oil, all right, and aromatase inhibitors.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
bro, that guy. The other day I was watching one of his videos. I don't watch his videos, but I saw like a PowerPoint. I'm subscribed to this shit because I'm paying attention to him now.
What about Broderick?
No, not even Broderick. The guy that steals from Broderick. His name is Victor Black.
No, I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about one of your old accomplices, Amin. Who I remember him saying that
just makes
combine fish oil with orals and it absorbs better. And
no, he says that about orals.
To absorb it, just take it sublingual. You know,
bro. When I was helping Amin out, I remember one day he had to make a video for a sponsor, and he was like, "I have to make a video on aromasin." I was like, "Go make it." And he's like, "What should I say?" And I was like, "You don't know what aromasin is? Like it's a suicide inhibitor. It's different. Than it's not a." And he was like, "No." He thought aromasin was Arimidex and Arimidex was aromasin, and he didn't know the difference between letrozole. So don't take, bro.
You got the brand names. Yeah.
You have to understand when somebody's doing this as a career, which Bostin isn't. Bostin is a real guy from the beginning. He doesn't pretend to know anything he doesn't know. I also don't. This is a personal channel. It's called Leo. We don't do this kind of stuff. But when somebody has a career based around this, they're gonna try to seem like an expert. I sense that from Victor Black, Roderick Chavez, Amin Alai, all these kind of type of people. That Dave's not like that, for example. Dave says what he thinks he believes, but other people pretend to. This is a ridiculous thing about the AI.
That's very common in the fitness industry because everybody wants to sound like an authority.
Exactly.
And right, but we can all, and at least we complement each other when we don't know something, because it's very difficult to know everything about everything that we do in bodybuilding or fitness or health or longevity. Okay. So I think a lot of people just need to specialize in their little field. And then let other people fill in the blanks, because I don't know.
Definitely shouldn't be calling himself the mad scientist, that's for sure.
That was his opening. But you know who called him Guru? Tony Huge.
Yeah, Tony.
Yeah, Tony is the one who. So anyway, let's. I want to ask more of your question, Jordan, but we're going late, so I'm gonna skip and move around a bit. So more fruta es more puta. This is an interesting name. More fruta es more puta. So this guy, he's
another more points,
commented
more
on the
dates anagram. Fuck.
Yeah, he's one of those guys. So he commented on the channel, and I thought I had to address it. This is not a question, but he said, "Leo, could you backtrack on your comment about starting gear early in your teen years as being advantageous? Kids are actually doing it, and your followers are promoting it on other channels and Reddit. People will get hurt. No scientific or anecdotal evidence is worth harming kids' health for life." So remember, this was actually on the podcast that Steve was on that I talked about. If I was younger, I would have probably started using hormones earlier and controlled my estradiol and used HCG and FSH. This, guys, I want you to understand something. I am not a businessman. This is not an influencer channel. The channel's called Leo. It's about me. And when I ask a question, I am trying to be honest. I've never lied about anything on the channel. And if you ask me something, I'm going to tell you my experience. This channel is not for kids. It's for 18 plus. I register every video for 18 plus. I don't answer questions from teenagers. They send me questions all the time.
Me neither.
So I talk from my own experience, because if I was 18, I would have wanted to hear that because I didn't know. I would have went on Anavar. I would have done those. I wouldn't have waited. I thought it was going to stunt my height. I thought all these kind of different things. Now, it will stunt your height if you do the things wrong. You may not know what to do. If you're a kid listening to this, don't go just listen to some guy and go do it. You've got to know everything before you get involved in something like that. What could happen to you if you use steroids young? If you don't control estradiol, you'll turn your cells senescent in your body and stop growing. If you control estradiol, you will permanently, it shows this in the research, permanently reduce your serotonergic function in your brain and become a hostile person probably for life. I've met a lot of people who use steroids when they're very young, and they have a little bit of different mentality. In fact, some of them are on YouTube, and you can watch them, the ones who used it from very young age, and they sometimes have different mentality. So there are risks there. But I'm not going to lie to you and say I didn't want to use it just because some people took the idea and tried to work with it. You know, what do you guys think?
You can misconstrue all the information that we put out, but people have to understand we do it all with our best intentions. And when somebody asks us a question like, what would you do? We're going to answer truthfully. That might not be applicable to 99% of the people out there, but at least we're going to give you our take on it. And you know, otherwise we're going to have to turn into one of those evidence-based channels with no opinion and no expertise and no hands-on experience. And then it turns into nothing. You guys wouldn't even want to watch it.
Well, I can do this evidence-based too. I mean, the reason why I changed my opinion was evidence-based, and not just from experience, but also from understanding the biology of it. I didn't understand that, and I listened to people who said, "Oh, it's gonna stunt your height. It's gonna do that and that to you." No, it wouldn't have stunted my height if I controlled estradiol, and it wouldn't have affected my gonads. Potentially, it could have affected my hypothalamus not reconnecting to my gonads. But now we know details we don't know before. Now, this doesn't mean you listen to this and you go on a no AI, no HCG, no FSH, whatever, and you're a kid, and then you say, Leo told me. Hell no, I did not tell you that. I said I would have done it. I would have done it right. I
don't even respond to those messages now that we get them.
No, I don't respond.
I'm 16. I want to grow my height. And
no, I never respond. Never. If you
Dude,
say 16, I don't respond to you. We don't do that kind of stuff on this channel.
No.
This is a channel above 18. No. But, it's still important for somebody that's 21 or 19 to hear this and say, oh, I didn't know that. So, you can start thinking.
Plus we talk about from both aspects, the things we would do, but also all the things that went wrong along the way. I mean, we've been very, very open about all the stupid shit we did along the way. All three of us, right? And as a warning, as true education, putting our ego aside and our reputation aside, like this, we can do a million things wrong. Everything we did wrong, and consider that in your decision-making process, because we didn't have those opportunities.
Exactly.
We would have the forums and everybody was like, yeah, gram of this, gram of that, gram of that.
Yeah.
And no health ramifications whatsoever. Don't worry about it. You'll be okay.
We had horrible advice, and there's so many things we did wrong. And the point of this is for you to learn from our mistakes. If sometimes I say something that sounds a little adventurous, it's because I mean it, and I have reasons to say it, but it's for myself. I'm not telling some kid to go downregulate their serotonergic signaling. For me, life downregulated my serotonergic signaling. I was already screwed in that respect. So it wouldn't have mattered if I became, I'm already hostile. I've been hostile since I was young. It's not going to change. So I was going to be screwed, and I didn't grow taller anyway. So there's a lot of things for me that are different than for you. You may be a nice guy with a perfect childhood, great serotonergic signaling. You go on steroids, you screwed yourself for life. I was already screwed. So for me, the serotonergic impact wouldn't have done much. But anyway, so Luke, so let's talk about estrogen a little bit. So Joshua Sukraj says, Leo, you always talk about keeping estrogen a little higher. Why, and what do you mean by higher? By the way, do you subscribe to this, Steve, for health reasons?
For higher estrogen?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love higher estrogen. I always try to promote it, but then people start to complain that, if my estrogen is 55 picograms per milliliter, which is what you recommend, and now I got all these horrible effects. So I'm not your coach. Right? I don't know your body fat levels. I don't know if you're smoking weed. I don't know if you're full with phytoestrogens. I don't know if you're taking Dianabol on top, which is not detecting as estrogen, but it's another kind of estrogen. So, it gives a better break.
Actually. That's a great point. Weed really has a huge impact.
Yeah, and then they don't even mention it, in the consultation. Steve, my libido is horrible, and my estrogen is a little bit higher. Well, it's not the estrogen, dude.
Nobody mentions that. They never mention kratom or weed when they do the consultations about sex drugs.
I asked them in the beginning. So weed, kratom, yes, no. Recreational drugs, yes, no.
Yeah, good idea. So estrogen is an antioxidant by itself. It's a vasodilator. It's associated with brain health. Because of serotonin, it modulates serotonin. It has many benefits. The danger of having high estrogen is that you get deep vein thrombosis. You can have a genetic predisposition to this. There's certain SNPs associated with it. You can find out. I've had deep vein thrombosis before. Actually, I've had it in the worst place you can have it, you can ever imagine. But anyway, I had it when I was much younger, when I was doing a lot of PE. I got a deep vein thrombosis. Again. Yeah. Bostin, you don't know what I'm talking about, do you? I got it in the thing you keep measuring each time. I got a deep vein. Basically, your vein gets stuck and it's like engorged. It hurts. It takes weeks to get it. But anyway, you get that when you have higher estradiol. That's the danger.
Did you have to do surgery on that?
No, it went away. I was a rough and tumble PE guy. I just waited. But anyway, so the point is...
Suck it through.
Yeah, but the point is, no, if it's very bad, you may have to get surgery, of course. But mine wasn't not that significant. But what I'm saying is I was prone to it, and I still keep my estradiol high because of... Men die younger than women. One of the reasons is because of estradiol. So it's very protective, especially like if you look at androgens in the brain, if you inhibit aromatization, it's neurotoxic. When you don't, it's less neurotoxic because estrogen modulates serotonin, which modulates GABA, slows the brain down. Androgens modulate dopamine and noradrenaline, speed the brain up. If you remove the estrogen, you get an imbalance. Of course, estradiol will make you look worse. You know, it modulates glucocorticoid receptors. You'll be bloated and all that, and you may become a little emotional. Another thing I want to mention, just as a warning, as your estradiol goes up above 40, as it goes up, your sex drive will start to be affected a little bit further and further.
There's a sweet spot.
When you go too low, exactly. When you go too low, it's a dichotomous on and off with sex usually. It's like it'll destroy you. That's when we say you have crashed estrogen. Yeah. So you have to be careful about that. But basically, I would keep mine. I used to not take an AI and take grams of test. I didn't care. So.
Oh, what was the highest your estrogen ever got up to?
I don't know because I didn't used to do blood work, honestly. I mean, I used to do blood work, but only when I had to go to the hospital.
Yeah. I've seen it on blood work.
I told you about Broderick having his clients do estrogen and prep, right? Like estrogen pills.
For what?
I don't know.
For anabolism.
It's not anabolic.
His excuse to the client that he had to use it on was that it's anti-catabolic.
It's actually not, but that's not true. I've researched this extensively.
Progesterone was that?
It's the progesterone that's anabolic. Yeah. Estrogen is actually not anabolic, even in women when they're estrogen. Because in women, estrogen and progesterone fluctuate throughout the month, so you can see their muscle changes. It does not change with estrogen. Changes with progesterone.
Let's just say the client did not look good.
I'm not surprised.
Has he ever had
by the way, the synthetic progestins in birth control are not anabolic at all. They're just synthetic because they increased bioavailability orally, because oral progesterone is not very bioavailable. So they have a synthetic progestin, which is very oral bioavailable, but it alters the HPOA, hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis. So these synthetic progestins that are being used in birth control, they have no anabolic benefit. They're just there to regulate the ovarian axis.
I don't know if they have an anabolic benefit, but if they are associated with cancers. For some reason in Europe, if you go to France, where my wife is from, they have micronized progesterone, which is a little bit more bioavailable as a birth control. In the US, they give women progestogens. These are synthetic progesterones, all associated with cancer, except for progesterone acetate, the only one that's not.
It's ovarian, right? No, ovarian cancer?
Many cancers, but mainly female cancers, yeah. Yeah, exactly. And the normal progesterone is not. So be aware. Tell your wives to be careful about progesterone.
I got a list for female safe PEDs, and the Paragard IUD is on that list. I'm going to record a video this week when the studio is finished.
Wait, so you're telling us about the insulin thing. We have a question. BNK says Lantus protocol for mass gain. We heard about Bostin's view on Lantus, using it once a week on a difficult body part last week. How do you approach it, Stephen?
I'll wait for Bostin to finish.
Bostin, what's that pill you took? I'm very curious.
No, for the ammonia breath.
I was like, he's keeping that in his mouth. This is an interesting pill.
It's just to keep the COVID at bay.
Yeah.
So what was your Lantus protocol, Bostin, so I can play off that?
The best one I've used and have had a lot of success with my clients is the one that Mike Arnold had me use. It was on one body part a week, like black belt, like leg day. It was 100 units upon waking.
Ooh.
And then he would have me do Humalog pre and post workout.
Mm-hmm.
But
how much Humalog?
8 units pre and 8 to 10 units post.
And that's with at least 80 carbs or more, pre and post.
No, the intra workout was about 75 grams of carbs.
Mm-hmm.
The intra workout was 75 grams of carbs, and the post workout was probably 100.
Okay. And then 100 units of Lantus on top. So
right,
how was your blood sugar? Yeah, how was your blood sugar throughout this protocol?
Oh, I don't know. I never checked it back then.
Okay.
Yeah, but that was on one day a week.
Yeah, just one day a week.
Yeah.
So he's not getting the effects of the long.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
I have clients on Lantus for 2 years straight, every day, without losing insulin sensitivity.
I highly doubt that's possible unless they're just replacing their
many guys. They're replacing, of course. They're not very high dosages.
Why would you have them on it every day? Is it because they're using a high dose of growth hormone and their blood sugars are high in the mornings?
No, because the growth hormone is blocking the insulin substrate. So it doesn't matter if you're on high growth hormone and add insulin on top of that. It just, the insulin is not doing the receptor activity. So it doesn't matter if you take high growth and high insulin. It's kind of counterproductive in that sense.
I've done that protocol because Dave Palumbo recommends it. I've done Lantus morning and night, 10 in the morning, 15 and before bed. And I can tell you now, after a while, I was like gaining fat, and I don't know.
Were you in the off season during that time where you're always chronically glycogen loaded? Because that ruins insulin sensitivity more.
Yeah, but I'm not a big carb guy, man. So I wasn't eating anything over 350 to 400 carbs a day.
Okay, so what I do with a lot of my clients, if they do insulin every day, that's for as long as that their fasting glucose is good and their post-workout glucose is good, or because sometimes you see the post-workout glucose start to rise. And they take between 5 to 50 units of Lantus, never 100. That's very, very high. But their diets are carefully manipulated, and with every insulin sensitizer known to man, to keep that insulin receptor fresh, and also make sure that they're never glycogen loaded, because you don't want to be glycogen loaded all the time. We're using the insulin to absorb all the nutrients, not just the carbs.
How much carbs are these guys eating a day?
It depends on the insulin dose. So of course, we're catering the insulin to the carb intake. We're not catering the carbs to the insulin dose. So let's say they're eating 500 carbs, that would get like 25 units of Lantus, and then maybe a little bit of Lantus post-workout. So that's 1 unit of Lantus per 20 grams of carbs over the day, and then perhaps another 1 unit per 20 grams of carbs pre and post-workout. So that will be at that moment in time would be right, because you have the Lantus working and the Humalog working.
On those same days, are you using Humalog?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you know who would be good to bring this up to, and this is because he does this with all of his clients are used to, was Blue. Blue used to have his clients run like 50 to 65, even some 100 every day. And he no longer does that now because he realized, he could tell you too, that he noticed that his guys were putting on way too much fat. So a lot of it's water retention too. So I don't know. Every day Atlantis, I've tried it. I wasn't a fan. I got better results doing a max dose once a week.
Yeah, I think
I use Lantus also, but I just never comment on it because I don't know what I'm saying.
So I think the reason why it works with me is because I control every variable of these clients, right? I control every meal, all the micronutrient intake. Their dosages are not that high.
But can we comment on something? The fact that Fuad thought that the Lantus pen was GH, I still can't get this out of my head.
Was terrible.
That's crazy.
I can't get it out of my head. I only used Lantus once, and I remember that pen very well. I know how it's shaped. I know what it smelled like.
There's guys in Thailand that took 60 units of Humalog.
By accident.
Because they measure with the growth hormone, right? So with the growth hormone, you take 1 unit of growth, it's actually 10 units on the insulin syringe. So
people do this.
They want to take syringe.
It's called an insulin syringe.
But they're so used to the growth hormone, and then they're like, okay, I'm going to take Humalog now, and I'm going to take 6 units. But they draw to 60, which is actually 60 units of insulin. Yeah, happens a lot here.
That's why when I have my clients use insulin, I tell them before you take the dose, take a picture of how much you're taking.
Exactly. Every
time. And they do it. Same with peptides, because a lot of these people, they don't measure anything. But I don't know if I told you, Leo, I'm blocked from Fuad's personal page. I've been for a while. He recently blocked me from the hostile page. And he also has me blocked on the bodybuildings and bullocks page.
We haven't mentioned him though for months, like at all.
He's so sensitive, dude. He's just a pussy.
He is actually a pussy. That's
maybe preemptive blocks. I preemptively blocked a couple guys. Also,
talking about it. We're not. I actually stopped mentioning because I felt sorry for him, so I just stopped. Maybe we could start again. It's really easy.
No. I think he's doing better health wise, also. So he seems to be in a good position in life for what.
No, he's doing very well with this show, to be honest. He's becoming a very good host. And he has good... I like his show because Iain's on and that guy Sister Nino is I'm a big fan of. I like Guy a
me
lot.
too.
His show is entertaining for sure.
Yeah.
You can just tell he's a bit sensitive, you know?
Yeah, no, he's not a nice guy. I mean, you know the many emails I've received, like over 100 from people who know Fahd personally. Were like, "You got him dead on. I know the guy. I trained with him for years in the gym. He's a piece of crap." 100. I literally got over 100 emails since with this thing started. With people like, "I live in this place next to him. Spent years next to him. He's exactly what you think." And you know, but the people don't know him. Obviously, they won't. Anyway, hopefully it changes.
He definitely has a good front going for sure on that show for sure. Yeah,
I think he's very comfortable with his friends, right? Or then maybe you don't get the same interaction when you meet these guys in real life. I met a lot of pros too, and you think they're super cool, and you meet them in real life, you're like, this was not the interaction I was expecting.
The one thing I'll say good about him that I made me think recently, maybe he's just an asshole that's actually deep inside, like maybe a good guy, because he brings on his friends, like that Paul guy. Like he tries to bring up his. You could tell he has some loyalty, you know. So I say that about.
I think he's a good guy. Just everybody has some emotional issues sometimes. I mean, I'm no stranger to. You know.
Yeah, but don't have emotional issues come and threaten me and then become a bitch on the phone. If you're going to threaten me, be a man.
True. Yeah,
because I'm a real man. I'm not a joke. You come threaten me and then you turn to a girl on the phone. No, that's my issue. But anyway, let's move on. So Bort Mitchell says, what do you guys think about running gear in ratios? Like Steve says, 1-to-1 for test primo. By the way, one of my clients, Steve, asked me about this recently. What other ratios would you suggest? So do you, Boston, Boston, what do you think?
Let's start with Boston.
Say that again. What's the question?
So the question was, what do you think of like people running ratios of gear, like 1-to-1 for primo or test, or different kind of ratios like that?
Isn't that what Broderick does?
Broderick has like you have to get from each family, and then your weight you calculate based on your weight. So he which is ridiculous, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, dude, everyone does their own ways of doing cycles. So I'm not going to say it's wrong or right, but it's not something that I have ever done.
So I think Steve has that as a heuristic, like a guiding, like a rule.
Right, it's just a starting point, right? And you start, like some clients, you start in a 1-to-1 ratio, and then we change it over time.
And I think why he says that in particular with test and primo is because primo affects your estradiol from the test. Right. And if you don't have enough test, you end up with low estradiol. Like if you're using 100 milligrams of test with 500 of primo.
And then a lot of people bitch about primo being so expensive. So I tell them, why don't you add a low dose of masteron on top, which a lot of people are against. But if you want the cosmetic benefits of primo for a lower price, you combine primo with masteron. And now you get the same cosmetic appearance. Let's say 600 primo and 200 masteron is a lot cheaper than 1,000 milligrams of primo, but the cosmetic appearance would almost be the same. Or at least, a true bodybuilder would say, that's masteron, you're flat. I know what's going on. Yeah, but most guys would just say, "Oh, are you in 1,000 primo? How do you afford all that shit? That's $1,000 a week." Yeah, right, or maybe more.
So one thing is, I think back in the day, we used to have like these, especially on the forums, like minimum test dosages. Like some people used to say half your gear should be test and the rest should be something else. I think a lot of that came from sex drive issues and being shut down. And we used to think that HCG would really desensitize your Leydig cells or your Sertoli cells, and you stop responding to it over time. It seems that that's not the case. And if it isn't, HCG works. And I know somebody commented last time that HCG doesn't affect their sex drive as much as test. That's because of idiosyncrasies about you. Unless you have gonads that don't work, HCG per test level on your blood work will make you hornier than the same test level injected. That's just a fact.
I agree.
So my approach is get your horniness from your HCG, protecting your balls, and then choose a test dose that you actually want. And I'm not so much into ratios personally, but it's not a bad ratio to have, because of the...
And you got to start somewhere, right? And if we want to give some general recommendations, a ratio or 1 milligram per 1 pound of body weight, that's just a starting point. And then you have to make the assessment for yourself if that's sufficient, or you need to make some alterations. But otherwise, we're just going to talk about test and primo and not give any dosages or ratios. And then people are like, yeah, but... how can I tell you learn something from this? So we're walking a fine line, guys. We're walking a very fine line between general advice and a little bit of recommendation where people should be safe, right? But then individual response and how potent your dosing is and all that stuff, So it's just a starting point.
Steve, I got to ask, are those real teeth? Because they look perfect.
I got like a light here, so and I've been on the PT 141 train, so now I got you're
a bit tanned. Yeah, you're tanned, huh?
Yeah, I got freaking tanned. So I used 1 milligram PT 141 for like 3 weeks, 20 days, so 2 vials, and now I got a tan. I didn't go outside. We're still on lockdown. I think it's just light.
That shit made me horny. That shit made me horny for sure.
Yeah. Because I'm drug free.
Those are not veneers. You don't have fake teeth.
No, but I did get them. Like Leo, a couple months ago, he asked me, Steve, are you wearing braces? So I realized it was so bad that I had to go get the teeth whitening done. Yeah, so I was like, oh man, it's got to be really bad. I drink a lot of coffee, so I did a couple rounds of teeth whitening, but they're not perfect at all. It's just a contrast between the head and the teeth.
Boston being watching carefully. Vaxtgranaten says,
"Oh my God, it's outside. 1 second.
Oh,
it's 1 second.
Oh, it's gone. How did it go? Did he disconnect it? Anyway, should we do this one together, Boston?
Yeah, sure.
So he says, also a question. What would be your tips to not get caught by cops when running a cycle? I currently live in the notorious country that is Sweden. You heard about this stuff about Sweden, right? Where it's borderline illegal to look jacked. I'm not worried about the coppers when it comes to ordering, etc., but rather at the gym. I should probably wait for Steve. This is a European thing. All 99% of gyms have an anti-doping policy, and cops can randomly show up and demand testing when you're at the gym. I'm not huge, but on cycle, I'm visibly unnatty. I understand that this is a fringe question, but it would be very interesting to hear if you have any feedback or stories similar to how dangerous it is in big countries like Sweden. I know, or how dangerous it is to be big in countries like Sweden. I know you mentioned Sweden and their crazy drug laws and regulations earlier. You back, Steve?
Yeah, I'm back.
So basically the question was about a guy in Sweden saying, do you have advice on how to avoid being arrested for using steroids in a country that basically makes it illegal to look muscular? And he's not talking about ordering stuff. He's talking about, he's worried he's going to be arrested in the gym for being muscular.
It's a huge issue.
I had a client in Sweden, and he actually, they would drug test him when he got too big. So he had to switch gyms because they banned him from the gym. And he said the only way he was able to get away with it was large hoodies and always covered up.
Unbelievable.
Move to a more steroid friendly country like Dubai or Thailand. All the Swedish bodybuilders I know, they moved out.
Yeah,
because they're so steroid phobic. They're doing similar things in Australia, and a lot of those guys just move out. Step one, make money online, and then you can live anywhere.
Yeah, it's interesting because Australia has a very different culture. Like, people love steroids there. But in Sweden, what I noticed in arm wrestling, there are no famous Swedish arm wrestlers. There's like 3 top, the best, all the female arm wrestlers that are good are Swedish. Like, not all of them. There's one Brazilian, but the top ones are Swedish. But the men, they arm wrestle with the woman there. And the woman beat them. They're able to arm wrestle with them.
But it's weird. Like, all those Scandinavian countries, they got the strongest guys in the world. Like, they dominate in strength sports. So I'm assuming that there's a little bit of pharmacology involved there as well.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that, like, in Iceland and Norway, they have a very macho culture. But in Sweden, they have, you can't approach a girl at a bar, or it's considered, like, from years ago, before this movement we had in the US, it would be considered rude to approach a girl at a bar. You got to wait for her to come to you. So anyway, I wanted to ask you guys another one about protein. What do you guys think about this? Classy615 says, do protein powders actually work? Do you actually absorb and utilize the protein? If not, is there a way to make a way or additive to make the protein powder work better? I want to ask you guys, did you notice equal gains when you drank a lot of shakes compared to when you ate real meat? No, right? What do you think, Boston?
I mean, I never done lots of shakes, so I couldn't really answer that. But I do think shakes have their time and place for sure. I wouldn't do 6 whole, 7 whole meals a day. I just wouldn't do it.
I've actually tried that, and it does not work well.
Yeah.
If I do a shake, it's post-workout, maybe an intra-workout shake, right? Or a pre-workout shake, but around the workout. But other meals are real with a little bit of fat and micronutrients and then blah, 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 all that stuff. It's just real food. Rip Rich Piana.
Yeah, I understand. I agree. I think that I'm not sure why it happens. I mean, like whey protein is so quickly digested; it's very insulinogenic. Maybe
It's really, if you want to raise your glucose concentrations in the bloodstream, the whey protein is the way to go.
Yeah, that's so true, right? All right, guys. I think we went through enough questions this time, but it was such a pleasure again to have you on, Steve. And Bostin, I'm sorry you're feeling sick.
I'll talk.
Yeah. I hope I hope it clears up. Most guys get over it in a week or so. So how long has it been going on?
It's been 8 days.
Ooh.
Is your wife as bad as you?
They're a little worse than me.
You know what's interesting? COVID is worse for men than women on average. Apparently
Really?
because of androgenic signaling. Yeah. So maybe you're highly androgenic right now, and that's why you're so sick. Who knows? Keeping things secret.
My arms are shrinking.
Bicep, though. Oh man, you have a good bicep. You know what I don't get, Boston? Can you explain something to me? Why is it that some bodybuilders, when they do a bicep pose, you can't see this line here, but they're really low body fat? I don't get that.
I think a lot of that is genetic.
Genetic, or is it side injections?
Well, it's both. Like it's both for sure. But there's a lot of guys that are not genetically gifted with separated arms either.
Yeah,
really.
But there's a little bit of fat, like here. Some guys are very lean, right? But
let's see what your arms look like. You look pretty lean.
On the arms, yeah.
The bicep is great, huh?
I'm off everything now.
SARMs, not even SARMs.
No SARMs. No, my HPT is functioning. Not the best, but it's functioning. Normal growth hormone, normal nebivolol, normal termosartan, no more ezetimibe. I'm clean.
Wow.
Of everything. Okay. Yeah.
No, you know.
Let's see how long that lasts.
That's the goal for me. No, I'm just kidding.
It is scary though.
Worst case scenario. He's like, if all else fails, I'll pull a Steve, but otherwise I'm not. Actually, Steve pulled a Leo, so I'll pull a Leo.
Yeah. Well, let's see how long it lasts, right? I'm gonna do some more blood work in about a week, and then see where I'm at.
But you know what's talking about Boston? Sergio Oliver Jr. Actually, I was just remembering. It was him I saw posing with his arms, and there's zero definition.
Yeah. He has flat biceps.
Yeah.
All
right, guys, I'll let you be. I'll start posting clips soon. Thank you so much, and see you soon.
Thanks so much. See you guys soon. Take